All right, we are at 6 o'clock. We are at 6 o'clock. Let's see, we are all present.
Yeah.
All right, appreciate everybody being here. We will begin our public hearing for the proposed ordinance amendment to Title IX, Chapter 3 in the Urban Wildlife Interface Area. Royce, do we have anybody that wants to speak from the public regarding
anybody at
that?
this moment.
Okay.
What's Jim done? Jim, you want to speak to that?
Are you? Okay, great. Go ahead, Jim. Make your comments. Let me just make sure that everybody knows when they speak in the public hearing that they should make their comments in the form of a statement.
Comments on
And state your name, because it's public hearing, and address. Will you, Jim?
name and
Address.
address. I'm Jim Chase. I live at 69 East Park Drive. Concerning the wildlife urban interface thing, I support it. I think it's something the city needs to protect us. We can look what's happening in California right now. All we need is one of those come through, and we can be in the same situation. So I encourage us to enable it, to enact it as part of our code. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. Anybody else on the public hearing?
And Chris, did you want to speak at the public hearing or just the?
Well, this is just about the code ordinances.
I think we're good.
All right. We'll leave that open for another 8 minutes. Let's go ahead and I want to address these in a little bit different order on a work session. So we will postpone number 1. Let's drop down to number 5 because that's an action item coming up later. Bond payoff discussion. So Royce, we called the bank. Our payoff is on December is when the windows open. It's do you remember what the numbers are on that, Royce? Do you have those?
Total payoff would be $412,679.
Okay. So that counts a 2,000 termination fee, 2,000 something termination fee, I think, plus the interest payment, right? Or the interest payment, right?
Yeah, we got a early termination fee of $2,879. The regular scheduled payment of $68,800 with a balance of the principal $341,000.
For a total of $412,679. $412,679, and that would free up.
Repeat that number again, I didn't quite get it.
$412,679.
Did you get it, Brittany?
412,000.
Okay, thank you.
So that would be any discussion on that as far as, and that frees up about 77, is that right?
7,000, yeah.
Yeah.
For the public's benefit, this is coming from our sales tax
Oh, yes.
revenue. This isn't because we raise water rates or anything else. This is money that we're receiving because the economy is doing well enough that we're looking at one-time money to get ourselves out of debt.
Get ourselves out of debt. We currently have a $400,000 bond outstanding right now, that's $77,000.
I think it's good.
We pay a year on that, so
Yeah.
we're looking at just retiring that.
This is actually the only thing we bonded for at this
Yeah.
point, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that would retire the only
Yeah.
bonding that we
Yeah,
have in the
that's
city.
it. Okay. Any other discussion? Because we can move right on. Business license discussion. So, do you remember the Senate bill number on that by any
I
chance?
think it's
81?
SB 81.
SB 81 basically says you can't charge businesses a fee for a business license unless they are materially impacting the city or something like that. I don't remember the exact verbiage, but,
Yep.
which basically says, you know, none of ours are, you know, they specifically call out things like a hairdresser or something, that's not
Yeah.
a material impact. But if you get something like, what Lee potentially would be doing or something like that, that'd be a different story there, but.
Yeah.
So I think what we have to do is basically We're gonna have to just amend that or just adopt,
We just amend our fee schedule.
adopt it? We're gonna have them required to have business licenses? What's the advantage of having a business license?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong,
You don't
Joyce.
pay any money.
Well, if they're not paying any money, if they're a business and they're collecting any type of sales tax, unless we have that information and we can provide that to the state, we don't get money.
Or do they? I think they're obligated to do that.
Well, they're supposed to, but, you know.
Now, the county will at certain times send us things to make sure, do you know about this business and that business, where we clarify that they are a registered business. But other than that, that's about the only report we do.
Okay.
Just go through the-
All right, so I had a question in regards to that, right? I mean, there's maybe a couple purposes to business licenses, but one, I think important part for Oak Ridge is the sales tax, because half of the sales tax collected from a business stays within the city in which the business is registered, right? So a lot of, you don't even have to have a physical address. Some businesses are registered at like P.O. boxes. So, but I don't know how the sales tax is collected, if you have to have a business license with the city, or if it's whatever the business reports. I'm not sure if a business license affects the sales tax at all for the city.
I think our best action here is to just amend the fee schedule.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll amend the fee schedule. But we still have to have a fee schedule for, what does the fee schedule say? Remember?
On the business license?
Yeah. What is that fee schedule?
It just states that it's good for a year and.
How much is it though?
45.
So when it comes to a larger commercial kind of development, right? Then we want that fee schedule to be in place. Right? So do we just amend it to say for immaterial, whatever it is, the verbiage is of the state, right? That we will charge zero, otherwise it's 25 or whatever it is, right? It's in there.
45 on that.
45, I mean. So we just add that verbiage to the fee schedule, right? When it comes time to make the proposal. Do we have anybody signed up to speak in the public hearing? Any more? If you did, you can raise your hand and make sure your name is checked.
Are you going to speak in the public hearing?
I just wanted
Yeah, just do that during the public forum.
Just public forum?
And Jeremy, are you speaking for the public hearing or just public forum?
Whatever's the best forum for that.
Probably public forum for the issue you're talking about.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, looks like we're not gonna have anybody other than, besides Jim, comment at public hearing, so I propose that we close that and move on. Let's talk about item number 1. So that's closed. Public hearing's closed. Proposed ordinance amendment. So I think basically Shay's saying we'll adopt the 2006 code, is that right? Is Shay coming?
Yeah, I saw him out there. He's out there with McKay right now.
What we got?
Is that
I will
him?
go get him.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure he should be here.
He's working.
I know he's,
I think McKay was down there stop sign.
was he?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were right out there, the
They
stop sign out there. Shay and McKay are both out there.
No, we'll just do that for a second.
Listen, they got stuff to do.
So so let's talk about the boundary right now. What are you, I mean, I think that option 1 was this entire city was in the boundary.
Yeah, that's,
Are we kind of leaning that way still?
I was.
Yeah.
Nelson wasn't. You were? Oh, I thought you were like, oh no.
Yeah.
You wanted my house to burn, didn't you, Nelson?
There he is.
If anyone
Even though
says to
you're a Duke
burn.
fan, I'm not going there.
We're just cussing you out.
oh,
They were
no.
bus chucking you. I wasn't though. I wasn't.
That's true. Trish was holding her tongue pretty good, so. All right, we are at that point. We've already closed our public hearing, so we're ready to move right into the amendment discussion that we need for action item.
Great. So as I looked at the state code, and I kind of compared it to what the city already had in that chapter 3 of Title IX, and I didn't see anything that conflicted between the two codes. So the state code's obviously more in depth, more detailed, but what I would recommend, and what I'd like to try to do with this, is that we go ahead and adopt the state code, but we don't pull the city code out yet. Like I said, there's no conflicts at this point, and we worked with this for a few months. There's some things that we've talked about, some, questions of, do we require people to turn in landscaping plans right up front?
Yeah.
Which doesn't really make sense.
No.
But in this state code, there's some administrative leeway
Okay.
that's also written into it. And so we utilize that and try to figure out, kind of work through it a little bit and see, okay, what does make sense? What works here? And then at that point, if we need to make modifications to, if we need to amend items in the state code, we can use the
Update our
city
code
code,
to
we can
override
update that
that.
to override it, just like you do with the other building codes. You just add
Right.
any additional
So
conditions.
when you say there is some wiggle room for administrative kinds of things, when you say administrative, is that something that I take care of as administrator so that we don't have to
Yeah,
go through a
it's,
full,
in fact,
full hearing
it
and all that
actually,
stuff, or what?
it actually, in the code, turns it over to the inspector.
Oh, okay.
The whoever which in our case most likely will be the building inspector,
Yeah.
looking at these items, but it basically turns it over to them. So I would basically say, yeah, it would be you,
Along with the building inspector.
along with the building inspector. We just kind of work through this and.
Okay. Yeah, I just don't want it to be for obvious things, which, we may see, we have to have a long drawn out, multi-council kind of
Yeah.
thing to fix.
Yeah,
Like
there was
animal code.
only one
On
point.
Animal Code Part 2.
We'll save that for next year. I did have one question, Shay. This is on section 105.2,
What page is that on?
page 2. So it talks
Page 2, it's
about
about
if the
20
code
pages.
official determines that we need to have a permit for certain things, and you go down to number 14, welding and cutting operations. I mean, is that something where, I weld in my garage. I know there are other people that weld here in town. I just want to make sure and understand that we
So
don't have
this
to
is-
go get a permit because I decided I want to work on a
Exactly, and
project.
this is some of the stuff that we've got to kind of play with, because Jared Peterson brought up, there's also another statement in there that's generic about paint. So if I've got cans of paint stored in my garage, do I have to have a permit for it?
Or one of those fireproof cabinets or something. Okay.
And so I think that's part of where we need to look at it and say, okay, what's reasonable here? I guess the big item that I'm looking at, that I'm still trying to feel how this is all going to play out, is this whole issue with the landscaping, removal of fuels, defensible space. I mean, as people bring in a building permit, they build their house, they put in initially some small trees, shrubs, grass. You've kept plenty of defensible space, but then those trees grow up and things change. And so, we've talked about education being the biggest key here, and coming up with some sort of a flyer.
Yeah.
And so just want to try to work through all those things. And like I said, I feel like the state code is great, and we can get it in place. We've got that checklist on the back end of it, which most people, when they go through that checklist, are going to find that the things that they're planning on doing already meet. And the fact that the way we develop with the water, the roads, our limitation on grades, our limitations on driveways, all of those things play into this, and you know, they're gonna find that, well, what we're building in most cases is going to be moderate. And so they're not gonna be required to take a lot of extra steps above and beyond. But the ones who are required to take extra steps above and beyond are either out in the middle of nowhere with no development around them, or they haven't thought about some of these issues and haven't implemented them. So by the time they're done implementing them, they're back down to moderate, and they're basically doing what everybody else is doing. So we're not really requiring them to do any more.
I like it.
So Shay, basically, we need to spend some time going through this code, but it's kind of a short-term fix. The proposal is to adopt this code, so any of the new buildings will be complying with our maps and our other ordinances that we have. But in the meantime, we can kind of go through and see what is more applicable to Elkridge and kind of the area we are in and what we need more substantive code on. Is that kind of the thought?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, so.
My biggest concern, Brittany, was that we adopt the boundary or the area, and we don't have anything in place that people can look at, and we don't have this checklist in place. So I feel like we need to adopt both those at the same time.
And along with that, we have option 1,
Correct.
right? We've got the recommendation at this point from you is basically the same.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, we did
Discussion.
discuss mediating things, we've got a lot of old area of the city. I think this is just an aside, but that's what the forester was talking about, having a chipper day or something where people could trim limbs and stuff and just have, a chipper come around to, try to eliminate some of those hazards around the homes.
Anything else? We move on? Is that everything? All right, let's go, we'll start down the list. Number 2, LDS Church preliminary plat discussion. That's you, Shay?
Let's see. I think I'll start it off, and then just initially, you got my memo on this. This has been through Planning Commission. There were quite a few people at the public hearing with this. The main concerns coming out of the public hearing were lighting in the parking lot and not wanting to have light leaving the parking lot, which in the plan that was shown, basically the lighting was around the sidewalk that was around the church. And so I guess it would light the stalls, parking stalls that were up against the sidewalk, but really doesn't spread out from that. It's downward directed LEDs. Another question that came up, or issue that came up, was on the south side, also with that lighting, sound, noise, and we looked at that. Basically the way the parking lot's set, of course, we've got roughly an 8% slope all the way down Rocky Mountain Way, 8 to 10% going down there. So you got quite a bit of slope on that property. Well, the parking lot's not going to have an 8% slope through it. In fact, as was mentioned in Planning Commission, they don't want to have stairs. And so basically you're looking at, 3% slopes, 2 to 3% slopes in the parking lots in the building. And so what that means is on the south side, that parking lot is cut down probably about 6 feet from the existing grade. And then on top of that, they're gonna have a fence along the top of the property there. So basically, you've created a 12-foot high sound wall, if there is much sound at all there. And then wrapping around the east side. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, so here, you can kind of see how that cross section, how it cuts across there, and so as you wrap around the east side and the north, there, you're up on the parking lot and the building are up on fill, and so Sean Ram lives in the house that is, the property backs that property, Gary Hansen's old house, and he was concerned about the lights from the cars along that side. Discussion was, you know, we could require a fence along that side also, around that corner, some type of a privacy fence. And so that would mitigate the light issues there. The other issue that was brought up by residents is concern about storm drainage. The way this has been designed, and you'll notice in your packet, this was a lot more than just a preliminary design. Looked at the site plans there and had it fairly, you know, in a lot of cases, fairly detailed engineered drawings on the site plan. But they basically, in the storm drainage, the proposal here is to put in underground galleries. And so if you look at the percolation tests in here, if they can get down to the gravel, it's going to percolate really fast and drain out quickly. But basically what those galleries are is they're large plastic, I'll say half-round pipes, just to give you the visual of what it looks like. And there's just long lines of these, and those are set on top of gravel. They have gravel packed around them, and so the water comes in from the catch basins, feeds into these pipes. Usually at the very front of the gallery, there will be a series of pipes that are there to basically slow down the water or stop the water before it goes into the other galleries and allow sediment and other things to settle out. And then with that, then that gallery has to be cleaned out on a regular basis.
Right.
But that's pretty much the maintenance with it. And so the developer mentioned on that they would ask their engineers to be extremely careful with that, conservative with that. I felt like the numbers that are on there look pretty conservative in the first place, and so they're also looking at possibly aligning those pipe galleries a little bit differently than what they have shown on there too.
What size pipe are those usually?
So, I don't know that they're specifically called out here on the size. Was it? I was gonna say usually they're typically 36 to 40, 48 inches.
And
So you can hold a lot of water in there. Just in the storage, regardless of the percolation.
and then are they, do they have the holes in them so they can percolate, or?
They don't have bottoms on them.
Okay, I see what
It's
you're
just a
saying.
half round.
Yeah, okay. So that gravel is percolating
Yeah.
straight out. Okay, yeah.
Do we know what kind of bedding, whatever I want to call it? Is that in a gravel bed area there, or is there clay in that area?
Yeah. So the geotech report
Thank you.
is which you've got a copy of it there is kind of interesting because you hit. I mean, there's definitely clay down there.
Yeah.
But you don't have to go too deep before They basically hit gravel.
Oh, good, okay.
And so it's different in different parts of that site. And then also realizing that side of the property is on fill. If some of those, if some of those galleries are moved from the entrance road up into the parking area, let's say, at that point, you basically create a large gravel area.
Yeah.
So even
Okay.
quite a bit more volume. So anyway, those were the issues that were brought up by the residents. And other than that, I don't think anybody was opposed to it. They were just hoping to try to mitigate those issues.
So we're not waiting for anything at this point then,
No, we're not.
right?
And the idea here is, this is kind of a little bit of a hybrid from what we typically would do, because typically we go through preliminary plat and then immediately jump into final plat. What they were wanting to be able to do was be able to come in, get a preliminary approval, and then they can take that back to, administration and get approval for the funds to purchase the property. And so one of the things that I've asked in that recommendation, well, there's two things I've asked with it, but one is that the recommendation for the zone change and for the preliminary plat are that they are based on the purchase of the property and construction of a church building, of that use that was approved on there. And if doesn't happen, then this just goes away. And then the second thing is looking at it, apparently going through that process, it could take a year to get approvals, administratively from the church before we'd be coming back for a final plat approval process. So one of the things that I was suggesting in there is that we also allow an exception for 2 additional years of extensions.
Yep.
Which will basically get us through the constructed period. If that does drag out to 3 years, you're really looking at construction being completed in 4 years. So
I read through all the documents, and I didn't have any questions over the documents, but one concern I did have is Chief Wade in the audience tonight?
no, he's not.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not here tonight.
Okay, so I believe last time we talked to him, the discussion had come up if we had another larger building built within our city, we would then be required to have another fire truck in order to keep our ISO rating. And while that's a couple $100,000, we also have the issue of manning the fire truck. And that was one of my biggest concerns with granting another large building to be built in our city is fire capabilities.
You want to say anything on that, Nelson?
Brittany, this is Nelson. I agree with you. However, we've got Mr. Haskell's project coming forward, and I believe each and every one of those buildings would push us over the edge. So take it for what you will.
Also, Mayor,
Yeah.
I talked to Seth today on that
They're
issue,
just really sketchy.
and he said we have basically we crossed the line in other buildings that we've allowed. But with the agreements with other fire departments, that's kind of giving us some leeway on that. And plus the ability to man fire trucks and that is, we're at this moment forced to use the other fire departments. And then on the medical side of the emergency stuff, we just don't have the staffing, for the medical. But if the agreements come with other cities or, that they're able to meet that, any needs, that we would be okay there.
Yeah,
But yes, we are across the line.
Right, if we contract with other cities,
So
Right.
Brittany, this is Shay. I had this discussion with Seth on the assisted living center that's also gonna be brought up tonight.
Yeah, because I had the same question for both of these, you know?
Yes, exactly.
And I had a chance to call Chief Wade, so.
Exactly, and so, when I talked to him, which is a couple weeks ago, before we had the TRC on that assisted living center, again, echoing what Royce just said, he basically, we have interlocal agreements in place right now where Payson and I guess Woodland Hills will, if we have a call and we're short-staffed, or we need additional equipment, they will come back us up. And that's what happens, of course, with the emergency medical, you know, we have Payson's ambulance coming up here with that. And so he basically said to me that the bigger issue for the city right now is just the lack of volunteers. So even if we had an additional truck, we couldn't man the truck.
Right.
And so he says, and so his statement was basically, we have to rely on the other cities at this point anyway, and so it doesn't really make a difference one way or another at this point.
So not only changes, we have to rely on the interlocal agreements, but will this change in any way the ISO rating?
So do they use those interlocal agreements for ISO rating or
How does that
for any
factor
other?
in?
Well, when I asked him about that, and he said that our response times were fine. And I don't know, Nelson, maybe you know how the ISO rating is set up. I don't know a lot about it, but
There are a number of factors that come into it. The age of our existing water system, the response times to calls. I mean, we document every single call from the moment we're paged out to when we're en route to when we're on scene. That's taken into account. The level of training and certification of the firefighters comes into play. Our interlocals come into play. Our fire sprinkler code that we have comes into play. I mean, I look at this, and if we can work this out, as long as the other cities agree to continue to provide the services, we'll be fine. But if we continue to grow and we tax their system, and all of a sudden they're looking at going, yeah, we don't want to bear that burden anymore, and we may find ourselves between a rock and a hard place. So I think the answer is that we start now, laying the groundwork to get more volunteers and get these things lined up now, so that when that time comes, we can make a transition and we can be in charge instead of the other cities. And I'm going to take this a different route. You're probably not expecting, but since you represent the church, you have the ability to bring it from the top down, to have the local leaders encourage people to volunteer and serve. I'm going to leave it at that. So,
Nelson, stop manipulating.
no, I mean, you do have that ability to say, hey, look, we've got this challenge in our community and we need some help. And I've already talked with some of the ecclesiastical leaders about it to see if they can encourage people to be more involved with the city, because there is a need. As we continue to grow, we're going to have more calls. When we have more calls, we need more people. It's just that simple. So,
Okay, anything else on this issue before we move to the next one? We're not taking any action on this tonight. This is the opportunity for you to ask the questions that's necessary. Hang on just a second. Ask the questions necessary for you to consider over the next 2 weeks, because we'll put this on the agenda to take action on the next meeting, so.
I do have one additional question related to the way this is platted
Okay,
and laid out. On the north side, the parking lot, you have to go clear to the east, to turn around and come back out to the west. Is there a specific reason why it's designed that way, as opposed to just putting a little more elbow room in there and having it dump right out on the road?
There's so much elevation change on that side that to keep that grade at an acceptable rent coming up, to keep it under a 5% rate, we have to go that far.
so we don't want another one of those that we have at ours.
I had the same question.
Yeah, but that gives me some additional clarity.
Church's parking lot like.
Okay, yes, sir.
Roger now, architect.
and architects. Just wanted to point out, I did get a call from Mr. Black, the neighbor, and he represented the neighbors to the south and to the north, and regarding fencing. That was a discussion of the planning commission. And they said they unanimously would respectfully request that the fencing at the perimeter be a vinyl coated black chain link fence. They didn't want an opaque fence, they didn't want a vinyl fence, but that's what they wanted so they could keep the views to the valley.
Mhm.
And so that was one comment. And another comment was, on the north side of the building to the parking lot, we're sloping around 3%. And then we've got a planter bed, and then we've got a retaining wall that drops down to that driveway. And the neighbor to the north, again, respectfully requested that we put a good hedgerow of bushes on that high side so that any cars that were coming at night would, because they wanted the chain link fence, but if we put the bushes, then the bushes would block the lights of the cars.
Yeah.
And so,
So did they want the chain link fence without slats?
without slats, yeah.
I see, so they, I guess it would kind of diffuse lights, but it wouldn't block them nearly as much.
The chain link, black vinyl coated chain link fence just disappears.
Yeah.
It's a really good from that standpoint.
It's what's on the Woodland Hills Eating House at the roundabout.
Mhm.
That's what's there.
And then the other comment, just from a fire standpoint, the building was fire sprinklered, and which helps a little bit, a lot actually. And just on the news today, the fires in California, there's a lot of LDS churches that are being used as manning stations in areas. So it's on the higher side of safety that we build the buildings to, so that, you know, it's protected.
Thank you. Any other questions? Brittany, you have any other questions? We're gonna move on. Okay, so we will have this on our agenda for our next council meeting for a vote on this, but I don't hear of anything that's their concern right now, so sounds like we're okay with that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, appreciate you being here.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for your consideration.
All right, number 3. We're gonna get through number 4 before 7, so we got 20 minutes. So
We're gonna get
let's,
through 3 and 4?
3 and 4.
All right, let's do
I
this.
hope. Let's do number 3, Haskell's Memory Care Research and Senior Living discussion.
Okay, so this is at this point, this is a conditional use request. And this is located, easiest way to explain it is on Goose Nest, right behind, to the north of the existing assisted living center is where this structure would be located. And Lee's hiding back in the corner there. He couldn't get back up here, so anyway, have you tell him about it if you would. And
Yeah, I'd like to. Well, everybody keeps calling it an assisted living center, which there will be some assisted living, but we're focusing on memory care, that's what it's called. And research. We've been talking with the Alzheimer's Association and directors, the State Health Department, and there's definitely a need for research. And you need people to do that research with. The Alzheimer's Association provides, and I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs here. They provide access to more than 150 promising pharmacological and non-pharmacological clinical studies being conducted at over 500 sites across the country. We would like to be on one of those sites. We'd like to be able to have the research done there, invite the patients to participate. It'll be just totally voluntary on their part. They don't have to. We found in talking to these people is that the best research is with the people that do not have first or second stage Alzheimer's. As you get to, third stage and so forth, then it's too late. And so what they're saying is that with these clinical studies, they test new treatments or combinations of treatments. They find new tests or procedures for diagnosing a disease or condition. They investigate ways to prevent the onset of diseases. They test methods to identify diseases or conditions at the earliest stages. Explore different ways to improve quality of life for individuals who have a chronic illness, their caregivers, and family members. As a person living with Alzheimer's, you hope for a cure. You hope new treatments will come along that will improve your quality of life. And you hope future generations will not have to endure what you must while living with dementia. These are comments made from dementia patients. Participating in clinical studies gives us optimism for today and promise for the future. They provide some participants with access to cutting-edge treatments and expert medical care. And someday they will lead us to the end of this devastating disease. We need clinical studies to accelerate progress and provide valuable insight. Quality of life studies provide insight into the stresses and effects of caring for a person with dementia. These studies explore ways to improve quality of life. Researchers gain insights by comparing the patient groups to healthy volunteers, people with no known significant health problems. Healthy volunteers' participation is vital in advancing the research. Clinical studies enable people with the disease to play a more active role in their health care by accessing potential treatments before they are widely accessible. More than 5 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's, a number that could triple by 2050. Every 68 seconds, someone is diagnosed with this devastating disease, which is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. The number of people with Alzheimer's disease will rise at least 14% in all 50 states over the next 8 years. However, the rate of increase will be higher, and I don't know why this is, I haven't found out yet, but in some states than others. According to a recent report from the Alzheimer's Association, placing greater financial stress on healthcare and programs and boosting the need for caregivers. Alaska is projected to have the biggest increase in Alzheimer's cases from 7,000 in 2015 to 11,000 in 2017, a 54% jump. Arizona, Nevada, Vermont, and Utah round out the top 5 with projected increases of at least 40%. In reviewing the Alzheimer's Association disease facts and figures, a report to find out for each state the projected percentage increase in the number of people with Alzheimer's over the next 8 years. States in the West and Southeast are expected to have the largest percentage increases in the number of people with Alzheimer's between 2017 and 2025. And in the letter that I sent to the council, I think I mentioned in there, you have a copy of that letter. That's the letter of intent that we send to the state. And they have, the State Health Department, they've accepted that. Of course, we're going through hours and hours of review for the plans and the system and the manuals and all of that. I'm excited about it. I really am. I'm excited about being part of this research and trying to help these people and maybe people in the future. There could be an answer, and if it's something that we can do to help make the answer, then I think it's worth it.
Council?
All right, so I read through all these documents as well. Besides the fire concern that I had with the church, I had that issue with this as well, but my other big concern was medical. We don't have the medical resources to handle, I think, this big a facility in our city. The other concern I have is having 2 similar facilities like this right next to each other. Economy drops or not enough people in the area are moving into assisted living, then we just have big empty buildings in our city. So those are my concerns.
Okay. Dale?
Yeah, I think, I've been involved in that, and actually, my wife, we've done some of the studies.
Hey, Brittany, can you mute your phone for a second? Thank you.
At University of Utah, they have a medical center that just deals with dementia and Alzheimer's, and we have done a couple of the research exercises with them.
Mm-hmm.
The key is if they could find a way to dissolve the plaque buildup, and would be a major plus. But I think it's logical that you put it close to the other assisted living facility personally. But I think it is a major. It's surprising how many people that you wouldn't think would ever get it, get Alzheimer's. Have totally healthy people, just like Joanne, like my wife is. But
Right.
I would be in favor of something like this, just because I've got a personal interest in it. But I didn't know if this was replacing, the discussion we had before. The plans that we had for that was some condos and offices and stuff there.
That's
It was
still
in
in
that
there.
same,
That's still in there. This is just one building.
but
So there were four
didn't that
buildings.
include this property?
Correct, and this was labeled as a
Yeah,
assisted
and,
living.
don't get
Oh,
me
as
wrong.
one of the
I'm all
buildings
for
that,
Alzheimer's research.
that it
I
would
think
be.
it's important. I don't know that Elbridge City is the best place for that to happen. We don't have an ambulance, we don't have medical facilities. I mean, if you look at the total number of beds in this facility, plus the ones that are already there, that's a lot of individuals that need more frequent medical attention.
Actually, at University of Utah, they don't have any beds or any patients there. They have to draw them from just their patient list there, and see who would like to be involved in this. Alzheimer's, it is when it first shows itself, you're looking for any and every option, out there. But I think having patients there that are on the early stages, would be a positive thing as far as doing the research. Even if you've got, I think on the ones that Joanne did, they usually had about 20 to 25 individuals that they were doing, they were running the research on. But I think it could fill. I think this is a very attractive area, and I think that having a facility like that will draw a lot more. There's a lot more people probably asking whether we have some facility for Alzheimer's patients. To be, and probably here in the city, there's a few more than what I know.
Nelson?
Okay, so kind of follow me for a minute, if you will. With the current assisted living facility, 1 in every 3 medical calls, fire and EMS calls we have in the city goes to that facility. We add another 28 beds, just doing some rough math, 1 out of every 2 calls that our EMS is going to have is going to be to one of those 2 facilities. We have a hard time meeting the staffing needs now, and we're going to bump our call volume up. And yes, we have a duty as a city to provide those services to our residents. However, there is a real cost associated with running the fire department. If a third of our calls are to the current facility, and we're spending between $16,000 and $20,000 a year just for dispatch costs, that's not including the labor and the materials and everything else that goes into running the fire department, we're already exceeding what we get as a city in terms of property taxes and the benefit of having that facility within our community, I believe. This is a request for a conditional use. I don't think we have the ability to provide the services without putting a burden on everybody else in the city to allow that. And then we bring it in, and if occupancy drops down, you know, you end up with repurposed facilities. One or the other is going to likely end up being repurposed if the economy tanks. And what are your options for a facility like this? You're either going to be a halfway house or a drug rehab type facility. That's what happened in Payson with the ones when things slowed down there and they couldn't get their occupancy levels up. Those are valid concerns. I've been through this before, about 6 years ago when we had a drug house, rehab facility house come into town, and I'll tell you, it was probably the biggest fiasco I've dealt with my entire time on the council.
The Wellbridge?
I don't know that I'd want to put myself in a position where that could potentially become a problem.
Okay, but should we make, is it okay to?
And Nelson, I agree with you. You know, you stated the concerns about medical and fire, and those are my concerns exactly. It's a cost to the city, and I don't think we should put that burden on the residents. It would cost more to the city than the city would take revenue from it.
But there's a shortage of beds for Alzheimer's patients. With my dad, he started 8 years ago showing signs, and we couldn't find a place to put him, you know, so he could get proper care. He had to stay with my mother, and it ruined her health. He was on a 3-year waiting list down at the Veterans Memory Unit. So these concerns about the other place might go under and be a drug rehab place, you don't know that's going to happen. There's a shortage of beds all over for everything, so I don't think they're going to have a problem.
Well, my concern is the cost for all the calls that we get for fire and EMS. That costs the city every time there is a phone call that comes in from those facilities. And I don't think the city has the resources to put another bigger facility in.
Okay,
Trish?
well, I had not thought of I saw that on this paper, about having the resources. But I don't think the other arguments, like whether or not it's gonna go under, are our decision. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's the property owner's right to do whatever he wants, and if his business goes under,
But it's a conditional
But it's a
use.
conditional
Yeah.
use, and so we can take that into account when we
And I
weigh
think
this
whether it goes
decision.
under or not is an issue, because if it goes under, then we have a big abandoned building in our city, and we have other issues to deal with at that point. So I think that does need to be considered as well.
to me, that's
Okay,
not
so-
the issue. My issue is the ambulance thing. I would like to know more about that. I think we need to look into that and see if that's, you know what I mean? Like, I think, to me, that's the only real argument here. That's my own opinion. Like, the non-compete stuff and all that, and having two of the same, this is my opinion. I'm
Right.
saying, to me, those arguments are null and void.
Okay.
I don't know for sure, but I
Okay.
don't think the city has to provide that service. I think it can be contracted out with an ambulance service, that there wouldn't be a cost to the city for all those calls.
I
But
don't know what
I
the
haven't done a lot of
ambulance
research on that, but
I
I
think we
don't
need
think
to
the
look into
city
that.
I
has
highly
to
doubt
provide that.
that you're gonna get a 911 call and have our EMT guys sit on their fannies.
Well,
No,
It's
you're
not
not.
gonna happen.
You're
That's
not.
why I haven't.
I don't care who you contract with. I won't let it happen. That's crazy.
No, we're not gonna sit on our duff and do nothing if we have a call.
So-
So the biggest thing is the cost and what it does to our
Okay, I wanna
resources.
express my concern here too. Because when I look at this and I think about research and I think about who provides the research, in my mind, research is generally driven out of some kind of a medical facility or university kind of situation where it's nearby. Because I don't know if you're gonna drive people in from, you're not gonna drive them in from Woodland Hills, so you're gonna have to at least draw from Provo. More than likely, you may have to go clear out to the University of Utah to get the kind of research individuals, this is my mind thinking, to actually do the research. Then you also sit here and we think about who benefits most from the research, and the best people we can do with the research are those that are early on in the disease as Lee had mentioned it. But on the other hand, the only ones that are going to be in the facility more likely are those at more advanced stages,
That's true.
where they need a bed,
That's true.
right? So I see some discrepancies here. I'm looking at not only the EMS portions of it, the fire, but I want to make sure that sustainability. I'm not against. It's not like I have something out for Alzheimer's.
Why do you hate people with Alzheimer's?
That's why I say I don't. But what I want to make sure is that this is a sustainable facility, and that who's doing the research, how are they going to get here, what is the typical distance from a university to the research location, to where the Alzheimer's are at, the patients. Is it 50 miles, 22 2 miles, a block? I don't know these questions, right? But this all, in my mind, plays into the viability of a research facility. Now, if we talk about, and there's a lot of emphasis in the research side of this, so I question that. The other side of this is memory care. That's a very vague term to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what memory care means.
Means they take care of the people.
Is it? Is that what this means? Because I don't see a definition of that. Now, if it's to provide assisted living for Alzheimer's and dementia patients, then stay it.
Yeah.
But don't whitewash this in
But
any
then it
way.
also says unengaged senior living.
Well, of course. But I'm looking at this
Can
going,
I define that?
these,
quickly?
sure.
Okay, what it is, these folks are the ones who educated us, housed us, fed us, sheltered us, fought for us, and gave us a very comfortable life that we enjoy. So we're trying to, give that back to them. But these people are those who have lost the chance to decide on their own. They can't decipher the sounds and the things around them like they can anymore. It's not just memory they're losing. They're losing the chance to function as they have the last 60 years.
Right, so it sounds to me like it's Alzheimer and dementia, advanced stage Alzheimer and dementia patients.
Well, no,
That's what I'm
no,
getting. That's what I'm trying to get at here.
No,
Or are you
just
just going to
only-
have me, because I'm losing my mind, going to
No,
show up there, but I
Bipolar.
don't show Alzheimer's?
No, the research will mainly be done with the patients that don't have it, that come in that are willing to volunteer to be part of it. Then they are matched with Alzheimer's Trial Match. It's called Trial Match. 500 facilities all over. We're not going to have patients come in from Delta to do research. We're doing the research with those people in the facility, matching that with 500 other places in the country.
Well, I'd like to know of those 500 facilities. What is the vicinity to the actual organization that does the research?
Yeah, well,
Within a 30-mile radius, it needs to be where there's some clinical people, clinical studies, trials, medication, doctors. I mean, it's got to be close to the university.
Well, that's what I think we got to understand, guys. Is we got to have more information, because until you have that,
I agree.
You
I
have to,
completely
because
agree.
we have to look out for the benefit of the city.
Absolutely.
And if we have to come back in and say this didn't work, now we're going to have to take a step back and look at a different conditional use. And what is the alternative conditional use going to be, right? Because it kind of can put us in a bad spot. You either have a vacant building, you have a conditional use that nobody really is interested in, right? I recognize the importance of the Alzheimer and dementia. Believe me, I really do. I want everybody to understand that, but I need to also express my feelings of pragmatic understanding of a research facility in Elk Ridge. That there's a bit of an oxymoron going in my mind. It's like, this is a bedroom community where we don't even have a gas station, and we're going to put in a research facility. So I'm fighting myself on this. Does that
So
make
if he
sense?
brought in information to prove, I'm just asking.
Yes, I'd like
but
to see that. Yeah,
If he brought it
really
in
help.
to prove that that would be like a legitimate thing,
Yeah, if there are successful research facilities that are 75 miles away from the nearest university that does Alzheimer research, right?
Then
Then we'd start. Some of these things would obviously do it.
I was just playing devil's advocate, like
We'll
so.
probably get some.
So that would be really helpful.
But I think the
clinician
ambulance
that's
thing
working in
too.
one of those facilities to actually come and speak to you. We could
That would
probably
be-
do that.
That would be really helpful. to hear from the research facilities that are really doing this. Because on the other hand, I look at this, that this might be just a nice place because it is a bedroom community. And so, but until I have more of the viability, I don't vote, but I wouldn't recommend we approve this until we have some of those things done. Any other questions? Because we got to move on, but we need to ponder this, and if Lee can get some of that additional information on the research side of that. And
I think we ought to ask the fire department to put together some.
Yeah, that would be,
that,
that's
you know
a
what,
really good
Royce,
idea.
let's make sure that we get with Seth, and I would like to have a meeting with him as far as the whole, this in conjunction with the church and the other buildings that we're doing as well, plus the needs of just this facility.
I'm sure Seth has a cost associated with each call. He knows that if we have X number of calls, it's gonna cost this much, and that's what our budget is.
I think if we have that, then then it's
Yeah.
fact driven, not
Yeah.
just
That's what we have to get-
emotional, which,
we
because I
have to get
don't
those
think
facts.
that's what I'm trying, that's what I was trying to say. I don't think it should be emotionally driven, like, well, we can't, I wanna do it based on facts. That's what I'm trying to say.
All right, let's, it's 7:01, but I think what I'd like to do is get through the Utopia Fiber presentation. I suspect it won't be too terribly long, but
And if
we'll
it
see,
is,
and then
they're
we'll go.
trees
Is that
or-
okay if we just delay that a little bit?
Yeah, we can do that, I suppose.
Okay.
Wait, delaying.
We're gonna delay the council meeting a few minutes to have the Utopia Fiber presentation.
Because I think that's why the majority residents are here.
Yeah, okay. All right,
All right,
welcome.
well, I've got about 50 slides to go through. I'm just
Yeah,
I don't think that's time for that,
Yeah,
unless there's
condense
pizza
a little
and
bit.
We're gonna go through in reverse order.
right. Start at the back with
So- I do have a presentation. I'm not going to go through that. I just want to give you some high-level ideas of what we do, what we are, and how this might work with the city. Utopia Fiber, we're an interlocal entity. It was started by 11 cities in Utah. It really felt like the broadband providers that were out there weren't meeting the demand of their communities. That was for their own purposes. It was for the residents. It was for the businesses. It was everything. They were just, it was a bad situation. This is way back in 2002 when we didn't even have Facebook and YouTube and Netflix and all this other stuff. So it's only gotten worse since then. Utopia's original phase had issues, right? You go look up some news articles. We had problems. There were some shortfalls with revenues, and the cities have had to pay that. In 2009, the cities had to make a decision of, do we walk away from this thing or do we try to make it work? And they created an entity that was called the Utah Infrastructure Agency, and so it's also an interlocal cooperation. You can think of it like a water district or something, right? So we're governmental, but we are owned and managed by the member communities. This UIA group authorized $65 million of bonds, said let's go build this thing out and see if we can actually build network that makes money and covers its expenses. They took it down in several tranches, so we've had several bonds over time. And that entity has been covering all of its debt service and is actually, its revenues are more than double its debt service. And has no operating expenses because the operations of the whole system are in Utopia. It's kind of leveraged the system that the cities put in place initially. But as Utopia, or as UIA grows, it has customers, those customers, a portion of their bill goes to Utopia to cover its incremental expenses, okay? So the result of that, details, is we have this big network. It goes all the way from Tremont down to St. George. It's a redundant system, so there's 2 routes all the way between all of these cities.
All fiber?
All fiber. There's 70,000 addresses today that can get the service. That's where we covered. We're expanding that 70,000 by about 1,000 every month. So we are doing a massive amount of construction. We can imagine how many, sprinklers we break. We fix them. But that's a lot of underground construction and conduits and fiber and all that we're building. And we're connecting about 320 customers every month. We're doing this construction. We just lit another area in Payson, just right here bordering the city. But most of that construction has been going on in Layton City, in West Valley City, in Orem. And we have a lot of stuff going on. Builds in Draper, Farmington, Kaysville, Salt Lake City. We've been doing a ton. Those are not members of the project. So this is, you say, well, what in the world are you doing? We are open to providing fiber connectivity to any community that wants it. but there's gotta be a project, we gotta talk about what that means. You know, if the city said, we just want faster connections to this building, we're interested in talking about what that means. If you're interested in saying, we want our well stations and our parks and our other stuff connected, we're interested in talking about a project around that. Also, if you're interested in fiber to every home and business in the city, we can do that. We are now in a position that we can come to you and say, we can do that, and it doesn't cost the city any money. And that sounds too good to be true, but it's based on some assumptions. And so the way it works, and let me just whiteboard it real quick, so I don't have to figure out how to do it on the computer. The all-in cost to a customer is $65 a month for a 250 megabit connection on fiber. The way that works is $30 of that fee is what we call an infrastructure fee. That pays for the fiber. And then $35 of that pays for the service. The way we do these projects is we say, well, whoever pays for the project gets that $30. Then the providers, that's your internet provider, so an Xmission or Veracity and InfoWest, we have 10 residential providers and 25 business providers that use our fiber. They get a portion of this, and we get a portion of this. We don't get this. This pays for the project, unless we decide that we're going to pay for it. We are willing to pay for it. We bond and finance these projects for cities. And so that's where you say, this doesn't even require a bond from the city. All it requires is that we go in knowing that that's going to be covered. Going in knowing that that's going to be covered adequately to fund the whole project means that we get a 30% take rate. So that when we do these projects, we say, if we think there isn't enough demand in the city for 30% of the people to sign up, we should not do this. In fact, we probably want some buffer. We probably want to make sure that 35 or 40% of the city would do it just to be safe and know that we're never going to show up and say, we need some money. We have a 7-year track record and $65 million of bonds that prove that this can be done and exceed it. Like I said, not only are we hitting all of that debt, we're more than doubling the revenue needed to cover that debt. So UIA, which is everything we've been doing since 2009, is incredibly profitable. We budgeted this year to pay dividends back to our cities. Some of our cities didn't make payments they were owed in the past, so Payson, for example, we're just decreasing the amount of money that they owe to the project from some shortfalls from pre-2009. We're not asking you to have anything to do with pre-2009. It wouldn't make sense for you. You don't want anything to do with it. If we could erase that period,
Yeah, isn't that because a couple months ago, I guess, that Utah Taxpayers Association, I think, did a probably an erroneous story, I would imagine, on the debt that's being held and how dangerous that is for a city now to hook up with Utopia because of that burden.
Yeah, so they did an op-ed. They knew that we were going back and saying, hey, let's do another bond. Yeah. And they said, cities shouldn't do a bond, or even Utopia was doing the bond, not the cities, but we were saying, yeah, we're going to bond, and we are. We have a vote next week that's going to increase our bonds by another $13 million. Our revenue already...
How much?
Another 13. We have $65 million with UIA. We're going to do refund, refinance on it because interest rates have gone down, and then grow it by another 13.
Okay.
Well, we already have the revenue to cover that debt. So it's like this is zero risk. In fact, we expect to do another $25 million bond after that, and we already have the revenue to cover that without even spending $1 of that money. So we're rapidly growing and actually increasing the pace of growth because we've basically proven that we can build these networks that are self-funded. None of these self-funded networks cost people who don't sign up any money. People say, are you going to put a utility fee? Are you going to raise taxes? No, nothing. No, if you don't want it.
All comes out of that 65.
All comes out of the customers who sign up for the service. Right. It's that $30 piece pays for the construction. The $35 pays for the service providers, the operations, repairs, maintenance, upgrades over time, everything else. So that's turnkey, $65 a month. That's the minimum. For for $75 or $78 a month, it's gigabit. So it's getting more and more popular. People are actually just saying, yeah, I'll pay a little bit more and get gigabit, which is crazy awesome speeds, right?
Just because gotta have,
just because they want
you
it.
gotta be as fast as your neighbor. There's no
can't
real.
wait
Well,
till
and
you
we're
What are you gonna
very,
do with gigabit? Run a company.
and we're very shortly launching a 10 gigabit residential product. We offer up to 100 gigabit.
Do you have dark
for
fiber
businesses.
still that you can light up?
Yeah.
That's in your backbone?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, so we have a backbone that goes, like I said, Tremont
Right.
south, but then there's a branch that comes out of Alberta and comes down through Payson and up through Spanish Fork and around on the east side of the lake, but we're on the west side too.
Oh, okay.
So that's our redundant ring. But it's 24 strands that we have along here on the backbone.
Yeah?
And we use like 4 of them.
Oh, yeah, so you got lots of capacity.
I mean, we have a system that on 2 of those strands, it'll do 40 channels of 100 gigabit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the capacity of fiber is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Getting it from there to here that's what needs to be done. That's the tricky part, right? So that's kind of the high level. And you say, well, is this all about internet? Well, it's not. It's about city services, and it's also about private competition. And some people, we get accused all that time of, no, we're government, we're meddling with, things that left to the private sector. Well, internet service and telecommunications is the most hated industry out there. It really is. Like, if you go to customer satisfaction, or the companies that are out there providing a good service, and you go to them and say, how's your electricity? Pretty good, it's on, and it's pretty affordable in Utah. You go to California and complain about it. What about your roads?
Just don't ask about water.
Water, I'm sure you have a well problem, but then you start talking about telecommunications, and we're terrible. The country is terrible, and Utah, there's still a long ways to go. But Utah's actually doing pretty well. But only in those communities that have fiber in Utopia, Provo City, Spanish Fork, certain cities have stepped up to get that into that business. And it's really bumped Utah up and made us competitive. There's a lot of communities that don't have it. We feel like we're the go-to solution to any community that's interested in doing that, that we can do it in a way that doesn't cost you anything. The customers pay for it. Now, the private versus public debate is kind of like, well, we operate as an infrastructure provider, not as a service provider. We build it in a way that private companies like X-Mission and Veracity, they ride on top of that, so it drives competition. The margins for that monopoly provider are huge. They make tons of money. You're already paying for them and their infrastructure. But in our model, we say those margins are pretty tight because that's what competition does. We don't set that $65 a month. That's just where the providers have kind of decided
Just
they're
happy
happy
to 30
with.
plus to 35.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of variability. X-Mission charges $2 more than that. And we're like, you charge whatever you want. They have a little bit of a premium because they've got a good reputation, and that's great. And others say, I'm going to win on price. And you get a connection, and you say, I don't like these guys, I don't answer the phone if I have any problems, and you switch to a company that will. But it all uses that same infrastructure. So it works very well that way. I'm trying to think of other major points in my 50th slide presentation that I'm missing. But our interest is to service the communities of Utah, not just the founding member cities. We want this to go all over the place. The fact that we're on your border makes the economies a little bit better. As we go to some cities, we're like, Moab, that's going to need to be a 70% take rate because it's going to cost more money to get to your city than the rest of the project.
Payson has it, Woodland Hills?
So Woodland Hills just did an RFI that closed on Monday. We were responding to that. We believe we're a great option, but this is on them to make a decision for what they want to do. They actually wanted to fund it differently. They said, we want to fund this potentially with assessment. We said, well, politically that's not real popular, but it works. And you have that option, but they wouldn't have the $30. Their service would be $35. So from a price perspective, it's awesome, but politically it's not especially popular to do that. We prefer an opt-in model, and we always lead with that and just say that you don't get accused of trying to impose taxes or fees on anybody when you do this.
We love transparency. People can see exactly where the costs are.
The conclusion of this, we do these discussions with a lot of cities, and we do expect a lot of cities in this area to do it. We have another kind of a cluster of cities up in the Davis County area that we're working with, doing these feasibilities for what it costs and all this other stuff. you know, we want to make sure that any community in an area where we're building has an opportunity, and that doesn't mean like, hey, we need a decision or something like that, but we want you to start thinking about it. We'd like you to do a survey.
Yeah.
And we have kind of a template, you can change it if you want. It basically says, hey, if these options were available, you know, here's a couple combinations of phone and internet and TV and other things, would you sign up? And, you know, that's kind of where you get some level of assurance to say, you know, if 60, 70% of the people say, absolutely, please, please, please bring it to the city, I'll sign up now, I'll commit. You can even get people to commit money at that point if you really want to have a level of assurance. And that's on you of what confidence you have in it. And if you say, yes, this is great, then you say, well, why is that you asking the question, not us asking the question? And the reason is because the way we finance these things is we need an agreement with the city. We do the bond, but we need a pledge agreement that basically says debt service on a project is guaranteed. And that is $0 at a 30% take rate.
Yeah.
But at a 25% take rate for this city, it's about $1,500 would be the shortfall every month if we fell short.
Right.
If it's 35% take rate.
We're basically just guaranteeing, we're the guaranteeing entity of that
Yes. Yeah.
infrastructure costs.
So it's free if we go in and we know that we're going to get the right take rate. If we fall short, it's not free. And that's how the financing works. So that sounds like, oh crud, that's scary. That's why we go in with all the data on the table and understand what's going on and what the demand is. As we look at this area and other comparable areas, for example, in Layton we've been building and we do a 3-year maturity, so it's a little difficult because it's like, hey, we just opened a whole bunch of areas and we hit 20-25% take rate in the first year. Well, it's a 3-year maturity cycle. You go to areas that were built a few years back. Linden City, for example, we're up over 51% of the whole city has the service, and so it gets there over time. But we like to look at it kind of as a 3-year maturity. We say, what do we get to a 30% take rate here in 3 years?
Yeah.
I think we'd be at 60% in 3 years, but that's what we would get out of the survey. And at that point you say, maybe I'm not even that comfortable with the survey. Let's actually go get 30% of the city to sign up right now and commit to it. And then you don't have any worry about it. Right. That's up to you as to what level of assurance you want. But we, like I said, we do have a track record that shows that $65 million worth of projects we've been doing, everything since 2009, we're far exceeding that. And so things are good. So that's available to you. I'll send you some more information that kind of talks about this.
Do you guys have any questions for him?
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
You answered the first one, if we don't hit our take rate. The UIA agency, if we join, does that mean that we get someone from our city that represents us on your board?
Not day one.
Not day one. Okay, so what does it take to have representation here?
So the issue is UIA is kind of joined at the hip with Utopia. You don't want to join Utopia, but you would want to join UIA. What we expect is that the revenues with UIA and Utopia eventually will be equaled out, because the growth and revenue and the upside on UIA is awesome, and Utopia still has a shortfall. Utopia is not taking on no more bonds, so its revenue growth is shorter. And I can show you charts and graphs that all of our financials are public information. When the debts of Utopia are covered by the upside of UIA, then that says you can now walk in with a membership without taking on any debt obligations. And the problem is right now, if I say, hey, you want to come in here and have control, a portion of the control and vote on the board of the agency, you would need to come in with a proportionate share of the debt of the combined projects, which you do not want to do. I mean, if you wanted to, great.
No.
But you don't.
No, you don't, but at the same point in time, you don't want them shoving it out onto the rest of us.
Right.
Yeah, we're paying
And
So-
that's
So the way this would
taxation
start,
without representation.
yeah, so the way this would start would be a contractual agreement. So it'd be an interlocal agreement
Okay.
between the city and the agency for us to be your partner in this project.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be considered a member of the project, you'd be a partner of the project. And then when the date comes, we say, okay, great, we're gonna do an expansion of the membership of the UIA and Utopia Cities, or one or the other, depending how we wanna structure that. We absolutely want you at the table, but it's, it's kinda like right now, the cost to get at the table is not worth it.
Okay.
But it will be in the future.
So as a partner, do we get the income that comes in?
Um,
Because if I'm a partner in a business, I get what, you know what I'm saying?
We can franchise tax.
It'd be a franchise tax if you did that.
We could, potentially. And then
Or
I
do we
had,
pay off Utopia's debt?
So there is upside to UIA in that $35 a month service fee. That's part of our motivation for doing it, but our incremental costs for doing it are low. I mean, our technicians are already driving through your town, we're already doing locating and all this other stuff. So it's kind of a win-win situation, to be honest. We're not gonna do it at a loss. We're gonna do it at a very nice economy of scale incremental cost, where there are some dollars to be made to help the organization overall. But the end result is your customers or your residents get lower prices. It's not just residents. I mean, the churches love us because they like to broadcast, the meetings between different buildings. The cities love us because we bring public Wi-Fi to their buildings and their parks and other things like that, and their utility service and SCADA systems and
Plus,
all the fun stuff that we do with cities.
interbuilding communications and all that good stuff, right?
Yeah, and this is publicly owned infrastructure too, so it's like you're not going to be leveraged by incumbent providers forever and ever in the future, and they jack up their rates, and this is, it's like, yeah, you could say, well, maybe this is owned by a bunch of other cities until the day of membership comes, but I mean, I would assume your relationship with Payson isn't terrible. Maybe.
Depends on the day.
We love Payson, they love us.
yeah.
But I mean, that's who you're dealing with. Is you're dealing with Payson, Linden, Orem, West Valley, Murray, Midvale, Centerville, Perry, Brigham City, Layton,
Okay.
Tree Mountain. I mean,
Then
that's who
yeah.
my bosses are. Our mayors, city council members, and city managers from those cities, depending on who they decide they want to serve on the board.
And I have one additional question for you. If the city already has conduit in place that's empty, that could be utilized for this, does that change or impact this in any way, size, shape, or form?
It absolutely does, and also any conduit that may be available from South Utah Valley Electric.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. 'Cause
Okay.
they ran, for every line where there's an electrical, they've got a vacant conduit right next to it, thinking ahead to the future.
We've had conversations with them because we're very interested in using that conduit. The problem is the records are not the best, and so our proposal, which would eventually be public anyways, to Woodland Hills was we're proposing a project with them that assumes we can't use it. It's not worth the cost today to go and proof all those conduits and inspect them and map them and all that other stuff, not knowing whether there's really going to be a move forward. Well, the nice thing is, assuming that we can't use it, it still works out very nicely. When we show up to do the actual construction work, we will proof those conduits, and anytime we can use them, we will save money. We are going to pass that savings to the city. This is not us trying to make money. This is us in partnership with the city. So we can go in there and say, hey, your commitment goes down, and we all break even at a 20% take rate or 25%
Well, I know
because of that cost.
in Elk Ridge, the mapping is far more accurate than Woodland Hills,
Oh, that's
because a lot of our town has been put into place the infrastructure really within the last 10 years, probably 2/3 of the town. So, and I know that's been
So
documented.
we believe that it can be used. They were
Okay.
very smart putting that in. And on the surface, and we talked, what is it and where is it and all this stuff, they made good decisions. Some cities like Lehigh put it out in the middle of the street, and we're like, we can't use it in the middle of the street because you can't connect your house to the thing underneath the middle of the street. But they put
Right
it
next to the
in the
electrical.
easement,
Yeah.
and it's where it should be, and it's the type of conduit that should be usable. We want to use it,
Okay,
but we can't guarantee it.
all right.
Anything else?
No, that's it, so I'm sure
Anything
we'll
over here?
be talking some more.
So it would potentially be less than the 30?
Hold on, Brittany, hold on. Brittany, hold on. Hang on.
But once the infrastructure is paid for, does that $30 fee come off then?
So the $30 fee has several components to it. About $23 of that is debt service, and $7 approximately is for churn. So you'll have some customers. We prefer to put people just under a 1-year contract. We lose very, very few people to cancellations, but if they sign up and cancel, we just lost some money. So the $7 built into that $30 is there to connect other customers that replaces the customers that left so that the revenue stream is preserved. So you have a couple of components. The $23 goes away at the end of the term of the bond, which is our bond, remember, and it's a 30-year. You say, well, that's a really long time to bet on this sort of thing. But our annual churn is 3.8%, and it's been consistent around that rate, which is industry low, and it's only gotten better. So when we started this project, demand was lower. We got the same questions about, well, what about wireless, and what about this and that, and it's like, it's only gotten stronger. We are taking more sign-ups and more demand than we've ever seen, and the trend is only in our favor that this long-term investment is safe and will pay for itself for many years to come. Right? So what happens at the end of that? That $23 goes away, but not the $7. So does that make sense, that there's a couple components into that?
So it'd be 42 instead of 65.
Yeah. And we've had some cities do a project where they say, we don't really want to do that, we'll just have people pay up front. And so in Brigham City, it was an option that people pay $27.50 up front, and they just own their own connection. They never pay $30 a month. I said, if that's the model you want, if you wanted that option in the city, we could do that. But people still bring that up, and it drives us crazy because they're like, I heard it cost $2,700 to connect to utility. It's like, no, it costs $30 a month with a 1-year commitment, plus the $35 fee, right?
They can choose one or the other if they want.
Yeah, you say it's this or this, and they take the worst of both and say that's my understanding of what it is. And it's not. Okay, so.
I just have to look into it more.
So, got lots of slides and spreadsheets, and we're going to go into more details.
I suspect we'll have conversation
Yeah.
and discuss it, and then we'll re-engage.
Yeah.
If we
We'll
get
start
serious.
other
after more
questions.
meeting, go in a little more detail and,
Yeah.
and apply some other information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming. All right, let's go ahead and go into our regular council meeting now. So we'll begin our regular council meeting by having an invocation by, I'm gonna volunteer myself this time. And then if I can get a pledge. Del, will you do a pledge for us?
You got it.
All right. Heavenly Father, we come before Thee this time, grateful for the opportunity we have to be here tonight and to govern ourselves. We pray that we'll be able to do the very best we can do and take into consideration all of the different factors that need to be taken into consideration as the Spirit will guide us at this night. We might make wise decisions. We pray for those who are affected this night by fires and tragedy in their communities, and wilt Thou bless them and strengthen them during their time of need. We pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please repeat with me. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda and modify the start time to 7:28 p.m. and also to have Brittany Thompson participate electronically in this meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Let's do a roll call.
Dale Bigler.
Nelson Abbott.
Ty Ellis.
Tricia Thomas.
Paul Crook.
And
Brittany.
Brittany on the phone.
All right.
Brittany Thompson.
Thank you, Brittany. All right, public forum. We have anybody here that wants to speak tonight? Public forum. Chris.
Yeah.
Mind you to make your comments as a statement, and we'll engage in a Q&A. So.
All right. My name is Chris Hermanson. I'm the current owner of Elk Ridge Assisted Living. And, I mean, after hearing Lee's remarks, I'm even more alarmed with the facility that's going up. Number one, I've been a nurse for 25 years. I've done this for 25 years, assisted living. I deal with Alzheimer's and dementia every day. There are several of these facilities all across the state. Anyone as an assisted living can participate in Alzheimer's and dementia research. You mentioned you went to the University of Utah. Why? It's in a clinical setting. They don't do a lot of this research in outside communities because I don't think Lee mentioned it's got to be in a secured setting. Is it a lockdown unit that he's looking at? He mentioned too, he's been vague as far as what he wants to do with the facility. He said he wants to take people who are pre-dementia and Alzheimer's. That's assisted living. I'm dementia leads to Alzheimer's. Just so you guys know, just a fact, the reason why Utah leads the nation or will lead the nation in a year of Alzheimer's and dementia, anyone know? We have a word of wisdom, we live longer. So naturally we're gonna have more people and they get older and they die and they have dementia and Alzheimer's. So in just this Utah County, I have a facility in Spanish Fork. We didn't have enough people to need for Alzheimer's and dementia. We had to take four rooms out of that. Seasons of San Joaquin took out their Alzheimer's secured unit. City of Payson just approved a 90-bed assisted living. I'm part of that. It has Alzheimer's and dementia. So there are plenty of rooms and facilities out there for this. My concern is that I was partners with Lee Haskell, and he told me, I even called him and said, Lee, what do you want to do with this? He first wanted me to be involved in it and help. I don't have a desire to do that because I already own a facility, and not only that, but it's competing directly against my facility. He said, I want to build it, I want to staff it, and then I want to sell it. So, I mean, to me, yeah, it's great, it's a noble cause, but it's really, trust me, that's not it. 2 facilities might fail. My concern is I have a 33-bed facility right now. Most facilities fill up between 9 months and a year. It took me over 2 years to fill it because it's an area that's small and there's a lot of needs based on infrastructure with the freeway that's close. I mean, that's why a facility is going up in Payson that's a 90-bed facility. People want to come see their loved one and be able to get out, so it's a difficult. I have 33 beds right now. Currently, like I said, it took me a while to fill it. Out of those 33 beds, 12 of them are Medicaid. I had to fill. I had to take people who I could get. 7 people are paying the full price out of 33. 10 of them are at least $500 below the cost of what is the asking price because I have all these facilities popping up around, and so I can't charge full price. So with the new facility coming on board, Lee was the general contractor. He proposed to do a facility 2 years ago, right next door. You guys shut him down because you had an ordinance that didn't allow a facility to compete against each other within a half-mile radius. That obviously is against the Fair Housing Act. So they were able to change that. So now this is a fluffy way to say I want to build a research and an assisted living, when in essence it doesn't look really good to say I want to build a facility that competes against the other facility, borders the facility, takes the view away, each room is a little bit bigger. I built the other building. I know the strengths and weaknesses of that building. I'm going to build another powerhouse building. It's going to be 3 levels, and I'm going to compete against it. I have a problem, but I'm a competitive person. I can decrease my prices, and then no one's going to win. There's no facilities in the state of Utah that have the borders with 2 separate competing entities. There's 2 of them. One of them right now, next to the Beehive Home in Provo, Country View, they just went out of business. And so they're also looking at selling it as juvenile delinquents. We already talked about the one at Cambry House. And I talked to someone and said, don't threaten the council members, because I said, I've looked into it. It's my livelihood. I've been here for 5 years. I feel like I've done a good service and provided a good product here up in Elkridge, and I did it because of the view and it was a nice area. But it's not, I was surprised at how long it took me to fill this building. It took me 4 years, and I even told Lee, I'm finally full. And guess what? I just had a funeral yesterday, because they come and go. They die in waves of 3 and 4, and then it takes a while to get those back. And so, I'm concerned because the facility going next door, it can't support. The baby boomers are growing and everything like that. But there's a whole lot of beds. There's thousands and thousands of beds. You look in Springville, you look in Mapleton, and Spanish Fork just built a Legacy. They had 2 cottages for Alzheimer's and dementia. They had to take one cottage out because they couldn't fill it. It's the same thing with this research, Alzheimer's, dementia. I mean, there's a lot of these, opportunities. I get them every day to be able to participate in studies, but it's under the doctor. The new research is new medications, Nemendas, and things like that they're looking at to try and help prevent, it doesn't really prevent or cure Alzheimer's, it slows it down. And probably in our lifetime, they may not find it. But sure, it's a noble cause and everything, but my concern is that, I've already met with 2 people, I'm not threatening the council or anything like that, but my thing is, I have a family to provide for, I have 7 kids, and I've already talked to 2 people that these are special use buildings. They're sprinkled, there's not a whole lot of things you can do with them. So my thing is, I have an opportunity to sell it as a drug rehab program. I don't know, it's not great for this city, but it's an opportunity. You got Wasatch Mental that just went in, and it may be a good fit for that. So I just don't think that this community can survive with 2 of these types of facilities, and it just doesn't make sense, this small community.
All right. Good. Next.
And I can't read this one, so I apologize, but it starts with an L, first name.
Leona.
Okay, Leona.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, my name is Leona Druce. I'm at 288 South Hillside Drive, and this is my first time to your meeting here.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, when I moved up here 5 years ago, we fell in love with this area. Just absolutely loved it. We loved the beauty, that we could see the lake, and just loved it. And I know there's changes that happen. I realize that. But I'm going to be honest with you, and I see where you're coming from with having a spouse with Alzheimer's. I had a father that had that, and so I know what you've gone through. So my heart goes out to you. My thing is, what are your plans with Elk Ridge? I have watched all these homes go up down here. I'm going to be honest with you, I think the Arrive homes are beautiful, but is there a limit? It's like we keep getting them constantly. Everywhere you look, you see Arrive homes. Can't you put a limit on how many homes of a certain builder are up? I just feel like we've got such a beautiful area, and you've just swamped us with all these crackerjack homes. I'm sorry to say that, but they're just all so similar when we've got such a beautiful area. And I love the golf course. And when I drive down and now I see homes are going to be blocking my view of the golf course and all these other homes down here, it just saddens me. Because, to me this is a very special, little unique place, and you're changing it. You're just changing it. And I just really feel upset about that. It's like you've just taken the beauty out of it, and I don't like it. I know we have growth, like I said, but is there any way you can cap it, so that we can keep this beauty here? And you say we don't have a gas station, and well, what are your plans? Are you planning on bringing more buildings up here, gas stations, a grocery store? I don't know what your plans are. So if you could just let us know, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, great.
And Jeremy.
Is it on the agenda to talk about more lately?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so I suppose that'd probably be the right way to do that. We've talked about
To talk
the
about
issues
what?
there with the water, with basin.
The
and-
Basin Property Gladstone area.
Oh yeah,
discussion.
we'll have that after.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? All right, great, thank you. We'll close public forum. I do want to mention that if you'd like to meet with me and we could discuss, it would be probably a good opportunity to do that. And you can talk with Royce and we can set up a time, and we can go through some of those things that you have brought up. Okay? I would actually like to do that. So, all right. Number one's already done. Number 2 is the proposed ordinance amendment. Have any further discussion on that proposed amendment? Way down here again. Somewhere down here.
I think it probably is practical too, to institute the state
There it
law.
is.
Yeah, I think so.
Right there. You're probably going to make a motion, so.
True story.
But I think we probably need to include the whole city.
Yeah,
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 there'll be two parts here.
absolutely.
So, sorry, Dale. Say it again. I'm sorry, I was fumbling papers.
I was just saying, it probably is practical to adopt the state
Regulation, state code.
Yeah.
state code.
And I think, you know, there was one section that I brought up, and the section that Jared Peterson had brought up with Shay, and we probably ought to address those from a rule-making standpoint, because I don't want the code enforcement officer making his own set of rules
Yeah, that's a good point.
in terms of what is compliant and what is not.
We hired out.
Because I think there are certain activities that, yes, they represent a little more risk to the community, but when I'm welding, within 10 feet of me, I've got 3 fire extinguishers. I use a welding blanket. I use a number of different things to minimize my risk.
I don't think this was actually addressing
Well,
what you do.
would have to have a permit to do it.
I
That's
guess
the way that I read it.
Days of welding
In your own
on
house?
dry grass.
It
or
looked
over.
more
Huh?
to me
How's
that,
I mean, if you were coming in and like building a structural steel building and you're welding the thing, or like the fire we had where the guy was welding the fence, started that this summer.
yeah.
I think we just need to maybe better define what that may or may not mean, but other than that, we need to do this, we need to put it in place. And the map, I think it's critical because it shows that we're on board and we have our neighbors to the east, we have their back as well. I mean, we've got an interlocal where they respond to our fire calls and vice versa. And they put together a WUI. I'm gonna put one together. I think it's good that there aren't gaps in between that aren't addressed.
So I don't read this code as, that section as a permits required for incidental or non-material kinds of activities,
Well,
right? So if it's a
I just
typical
wanna make sure.
activity done out of a residential home, because, you know, motor vehicle fuel dispensing station. I don't think that means you're gonna fill your car up with a gas can. Right? And so when it says welding and cutting operations, I don't think that means that you're gonna go out and weld a odd looking hexagon ball.
Like my
thing
son did, yes.
in your yard, you know what I mean? Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it looks like it's more about a facility that is erected or constructed, altered, repaired, blah, 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 for that kind of.
So we're not gonna issue a
For
business
that
license to a welding operator.
We're not gonna give a
This is
welding somebody necessarily without a permit, right? That's how I.
I just wanna make sure.
And that's what I'm saying, we need to look at those things and
Yeah,
and basically come up with our in-house policy. The way it's written is very generic,
it is,
so that we can
yeah.
determine what that level would have to be
Right.
if.
Because, yeah, we do fun things, right? We don't wanna,
Yeah.
we don't
Okay.
wanna, but, you know, and, yeah,
All right.
candles and open flames in
Okay,
assembly areas, right?
So
Well,
we've got 2 different pieces here then.
you can't have a Scentsy candle in the garage, right? I mean, that's just, you know.
No,
I've
I
already
like the
broken
smell of
code.
gun smoke.
Since these are candles, Mayor.
Oh, sorry, I'm
It heats it up with a light bulb.
Well, it can if you heat it up
That's the
hot
big
enough.
selling point for Scentsy.
I'm sorry.
I've been to enough of those home parties to know.
Okay,
So that and the area need to be in a motion. Are we okay with doing that in one motion?
So on this paperwork that we've got here, Royce, it's 17 dash question mark. Do you have the additional numbers that you want in there before I make the motion? Or is it gonna be a fill in the blank?
17.
Or are we in 17 dash 10 dash 10, where today's the 10th day and 10th month?
No, it's the next amendment in line, and I can't remember what the last one was.
210.
17 dash 10?
210, I know.
210, 17-210?
No, 17-10.
Okay.
All right. I will make a motion that we adopt ordinance 17-10 as outlined along with the urban interface map. As
Option
presented.
1.
Option 1.
Inclusive of the entire city.
Inclusive of the entire city.
Sound reasonable? We have a second. We need to do a roll call vote on this. So, Paul,
Aye.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Dale.
Aye.
Brittany.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously.
Hey, and Mayor, Council, I need to disengage.
What did she say?
I've got about half an hour until I can get back on. Do you want me to call back in, or?
We'll be done in just a minute. If you want to call back in for the remaining portion of the work session, you can do that.
Okay, are we just voting on the other two issues right now, or we've got as much discussion on them?
We got 2 quick issues to go.
Okay.
All right, business licenses. Sounds like we need a motion to alter the fee schedule so that, what's the verbiage they use? Is it in the state code, do you remember?
Why don't we just exempt home-based businesses and that pretty much takes
We could
care
do
of
that.
everything.
And that would work.
That would work.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we exempt home-based businesses from being required to pay for a business license.
Okay,
Second.
we have a second. Tricia seconds that. We have to have a roll call on this one too? Okay,
Now, this is done by resolution, so you have to do the date on that one.
okay. Do we have a resolution number?
So it'll be 17-10-1R.
10, 1 R.
Okay,
Okay,
so amended.
and a second again, just
Yep,
for
second,
Trish.
right here.
Okay, Paul,
Aye.
Trish,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Dale,
Aye.
Brittany.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. Bond payoff discussion and decision.
Pay it off.
Let's do
I
it.
think we
Let's
need
pay
to
it
pay
off.
it off.
Well, we got a motion coming right now. Go ahead.
Go for it,
Go
Dale.
Dale.
Aye.
No, make the motion.
Oh, motion. I make a
Whatever
motion that
works.
we pay off our existing bond payoff of
412,679.
400,
Is that right? 412,679.
412,679.
And that's a
Motion.
motion.
Motion's been made to pay off the current sales tax bond for, do I have a second?
I second.
Now, can I add on that one that we're going to
Oh,
amend the budget?
That's true. This is a motion to amend the,
Oh.
this is a
Proceed
motion
to pay
okay,
off, which means amending the budget.
to proceed to amend the budget. That's what this is,
Okay.
right? Do we have to have a public hearing on that?
We're gonna have to
Because we'll have to have a public
yeah.
hearing on the amendment of the budget. So we
So
just
we
want a
make-
proposal to go forward with that
Oh, okay.
process,
Okay.
right?
Let's
So
get
So
out of debt.
make a motion that we
Debt free.
amend the budget,
move,
that we move forward to a public hearing to amend the budget to be able to pay off our bond.
perfect.
Okay.
Nelson
And I'll second
seconds it.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Passes.
Bye, Brittany.
All right. Can I get I'd like to have a motion to agenda regular city council meeting and go
To
back
end?
into
To
our.
agenda or end?
End it.
End it.
Did I say agenda?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I understood. So moved.
It's a new word.
Royce is buzzed out back there. It's been a long day, hasn't it, Royce?
Can we end this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adjourn our regular city council meeting. Go back to our work session.
Dale seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great. Now let's go back up.
Good night, guys. I'm
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Wait, talk to you later. Yes, see ya.
Let's talk about the crosswalk
Yeah.
down there. This is a hot issue for me,
Why is this a hot issue?
Yeah, I
right?
received that.
Did we
I
get
received
any,
that.
did Cherry, did we
Email.
get any confirmation of the
I got yelled at.
pedestrian
Bumped out
traffic
yesterday
down
because I was
along
in the road.
that, where the trail
She's
ends
very-
on, what's that road?
I did.
I did.
Goes across there off of Bell Creek
I'm sure
Drive?
you did.
Right, the Pine Tree Cove?
Pine View Cove, yeah.
Now, there was a group up there this morning, students, so I don't know if the bus stop's right there.
Wait, where? Oh, up at the
Well, I
top,
think they
yes.
do. It should
The
have been
junior
re-
high stops up there. The
Yes.
junior high stops up there, because
And
that's
kids
my first
have to
stop.
cross the street to get on the bus.
On the
I think
east,
she
it was,
pulls
this
in.
morning, it was on the east side,
I think
about
she-
Pine Tree Cove, Skyhawk, right there.
It
There
says
was a
she
group
goes,
about
if she
four.
goes up,
Yeah,
she lets them on.
so the people that
They don't
are
have to cross the street.
on the west side have to cross over Elk Ridge Drive to get to that bus
That's
stop.
true, they do.
Yes.
To get to that bus stop. Listen, I got honked at and told to get out of the road the other day when I was running over there. True
Why
story.
were you in the road? We
Because I was
we have a
running.
trail.
Nobody uses it.
Actually,
It was like
I
5 in
had
the
a-
morning.
I had a
It's
phone
not
call,
working.
I had an email from a resident that had indicated that they almost got hit. Those that live on
Yeah,
west
Yeah, the
of-
mailboxes are
that-
across.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
their mailboxes
mailboxes
across
are
the street.
across the street there.
It's a huge
We do
problem.
need to make a,
And there's a lot of little kids.
I think personally, and we kind of discussed it early on, and we're planning on that being the main crossing, right?
Mhm.
Is that I think we need to put a concrete island, a safety island in the middle of that would be one, and then striping. I think that would help. You know, you could do it, you know, just a concrete safety island on top of the existing asphalt, it's just in the middle there, where they feel like you've got.
Well, that's at the very end of the island that's there now, right?
It's a little, no, but it's, I think it's a
Turning lane.
It's a
little
turn lane
further.
right there.
Yeah, yeah. I think it ought to be striped. I think that's,
For sure.
I mean, we talked about this when we were discussing the little triangular peninsula
Correct.
piece and having the trail come over, and at this point in time, that trail piece that's there basically goes to nowhere, and we need to redirect people over to the other side so they can loop around.
Yeah, it does go,
Anyways,
it is a trail.
And I think if we put the
That's what
crosswalk,
was in
then
the-
that's a clear indication to the people that are crossing that area, that's the preferred location for them to cross.
But when I went to driver's ed, it
Another-
said whether it was a marked crosswalk or not, pedestrians had the right of
Well,
way.
yes, they
That's
do.
enforceable by,
Yes.
so,
Well-
The lady that yelled at me said
but-
it wasn't.
But I think if we can,
I mean, I think
Direct
it needs to
them
be
that way.
marked, but still, people need to
Well, I
know that.
think we discussed having the red flag available there on each side too. You know, for pedestrians crossing. You know, like you do it in
Spanish
Spanish
Fork?
Fork.
Something for them to throw at them.
Listen, the way fast, how fast.
And
was
actually,
someone
that trail does, you access
And we
the
use it to
mailboxes, all the mailboxes right there.
Did we get, I can't remember what we got an answer on that.
there? You can.
no.
I don't think we got a good answer.
Okay.
I don't think so, I think it probably just comes out of our road budget. I mean, that's,
Yeah, I think so.
it's not around the general fund and.
I think we should stripe it, and I'd like to put,
Like crossing,
warning,
yeah.
flashing warning
Ooh,
signs, not
if we can-
across, not the ones across, but the ones on the, you
We
know,
like to have down
Do I
there.
get to
But
hit
they
the
can just
button,
kick.
do I get to hit the button and it goes?
yes,
That's
Yeah,
what I'm
like,
talking about.
They have those with Salem Hills High
Yes.
down there on the highway.
Yeah, they do,
Mhm.
right there on the.
right, we got the LED flash,
Yeah, only when
right,
someone's
on
crossing,
that.
which is
To make
really
them
nice.
slower in
I-
battery.
Because I think it's
I
a real
think that's
issue,
more
because
It is an issue.
I imagine people go down that pretty quick,
I mean.
I don't know,
Yeah,
right?
it's ridiculous.
I'm looking at you back there, Sherry.
Sherry? Sometimes it's me.
So what do they, so if that's the case, it's not a school crossing,
Not yet, but it will be.
right? So it wouldn't
Yeah.
change the speed limit, right? It would remain 30. Uh,
35 or 30, is it 30?
Just have it
30.
designated as as
But it gives the
pedestrian crossing.
warning. Does that tighten up any enforcement there? I mean, when those warning sights are on and
Listen,
people are in the
those are flashing
crosswalk
and
and
you
you get
keep
somebody
going.
zipping by at 40, what do you do?
Definitely makes it easier to.
Can you double ticket?
enforce For having people run those things.
I'm just seeing a cash cow.
Well,
from the city.
So,
from a-
yeah, you can do speed
Yeah.
and failure to yield, so it's usually easier.
If you
When
hit
I see
somebody
those
in
lights, I
a
stop.
marked crosswalk,
Yeah.
the liability side of
Well,
it
Nelson,
goes way up.
the whole idea is so nobody hits it.
I have
know it,
I
and
have
I'm
a
just
friend
saying
that got
that
a ticket for
that's
not
a
yielding to
deterrent.
pedestrians.
Is-
I mean, I don't want these lights to
No.
say, there's somebody
No,
there,
no,
points are
it's-
double.
It's not.
I told you this could be a city cash cow. Like, I don't.
We're gonna charge a toll.
The problem is educating the public, because I have people
How
put
much are
my
those?
stop signs on my school bus every day. Our city does that.
So how much is it to stripe?
Striping wouldn't be terribly expensive. The most expensive part would be your signs.
Right, yeah.
You know, I know I got a quote on the stop sign. It was like 3,200, roughly somewhere in there, 28 or 32 somewhere. Striping wouldn't be bad, but those signs are.
Wait, a stop sign, like the blinking one?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, like the
Listen,
panel and all
that's
that
cheaper
stuff.
than a lawsuit when we don't have anywhere for those people to cross and the city's then
Sure.
sued.
Will you look into that?
Yeah, I'll pull some numbers.
We may
together.
have to have council approval to do that, but I think that that's something that, I don't know if we can get it done, we can get striping done right away, I would imagine,
Yeah, I would
before
say-
the snow flies.
Yeah.
Well, then we gotta do it before Friday.
Yeah.
No!
Yeah, there's
Saturday.
No, before Friday, I wanna give plenty of
How
clear
much would
time.
the striping be?
I'm moving.
Just, we could just do that, right?
Probably.
Without having these
It's
guys
true,
approve
when we
it.
get those, we won't get to see.
Well,
Yeah,
as far as the
it's less
funding
than-
goes.
It's less than
Yeah.
$500.
No,
Stripe
Friday
can
is
approve
60,
it.
Friday is 60.
I could approve it.
Then let's look at
Saturday.
lights.
Yeah.
You okay with that if we invest
Yeah, I'm
in?
fine with
No,
that.
and I think first
Mine's
at
on
least,
Saturday,
let's get
but,
that marked.
Okay. Royce, anything, comment?
You know, just the sign without the flashing though.
Now, the only thing I wanna make sure is that when we
Crosswalk.
do the striping, that we probably ought to look at that and get agreement into the exact, where we want that striping to be,
Yeah.
right?
Now, when we're
So-
doing that, can we push the stop sign out by the blind corner?
You mean move it out a few more feet?
Yeah, I thought that we were gonna do that, remember?
Well, there needs to be a curbing, I think there needs to be a curb modification there
I
to
just
get
keep
that
almost
stuff.
getting hit nonstop.
You stop.
But we've
I
talked
do
about,
stop, but with how
Creep
fast
out.
people are going down that hill, like, it doesn't matter.
When I was in the dump truck the other day, you could see over the fence. So I suggest you just drive the dump truck.
I'm trying to crash my pilot by going in your car.
You don't
I
need
wanna
to
now
see
be
it.
anywhere.
we'll issue one of those Curious George snorkels with a mirror.
Yeah, there you go.
Somebody's been watching too many cartoons.
Been watching Crickets.
Okay, we're gonna pursue that. Payson Properties, Gladstone area discussion.
So you and Nelson had a discussion with the city manager, didn't you?
Yes.
We got an email from
His
him.
letter was
Well, I read
kind
this.
of outlining that. And,
What's that?
I-
I'm gonna print that guy out.
I didn't know exactly what he meant about
The 5 to 7
transferring
years.
water.
Well, basically,
Not physically, right?
well, on paper. I mean, basically what they're gonna do is they're gonna take their paper water rights and they're gonna put in a change application with the state to move it from their point of diversion over to ours, which would then allow us to pump more water from our location.
And who charges them for water, us or them?
Oh, we would.
We charge Payson,
Yeah, we charge Payson.
and Payson collects.
You guys, no, that's.
But
nonsense.
5 to 7 years is not temporary.
Well, it may not be, but here's a couple points to ponder on that, okay? First, whether it's coming out of our well, or if he drills his own well, or Payson pulls it out of their well, it's all coming out of the same stinking aquifer.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay, so that part is the case. Now, the second part is, when we were talking about this with Payson, they said, well, you know what we do to everybody that's outside of our city limits on any of our fees? We just double it. So their water rates would be double, and that'd cover the cost
You
of
have to
all them
justify
other
that.
things.
You
Well,
can't just
I
do
know.
it.
Right.
You can't
That's
just do
what-
it because they're not in the
No.
city, that's
Because
against
Payson
law.
City
No,
won't
but
let
we
them
have to be able
annex
to
into
cover the
Elk Ridge,
cost.
we now charge double? That kind of
We
seems
have to
sketchy.
justify any
Yeah.
additional thing.
Objection to just.
That's less of a concern I have.
I
Elbert.
mean, it's
Well,
a concern to me.
because they haven't started redeveloping their foothills.
Well, that's their problem.
And,
Yeah, sounds
and
like
actually,
there's no
that
problem
is
to
only, it's only a few
Well,
properties.
What is
Well,
It's more than that.
it could be a lot more than that, depending on how that property is
Because how many-
developed.
By you, there's a lot, right?
Up on Gladstone Drive, you're probably looking at 10 pieces of property up there. Just realistically, unless they do some sort of high density down by the golf course.
Oh.
The rest of it's really not. They would have to. There'd be a lot of infrastructure there. I'm not sure how that property on the north side is planning on developing, but definitely the south side stuff's acre lots are bigger. There's really not going to be a bunch. And that's kind of the complexity. So the 5 to 7 year thing, I think they're throwing that out there to just be safe. their real plan is 2 years to have tanks in on their water system. I guess there is a project going in here that they're about to look at approving down there that's gonna push their water system.
So do you wanna stay in Payson now?
I don't really care.
You just wanna
Honestly.
build your
I just
house?
wanna build a house.
We're not really pursuing any boundary changes from my.
No, I know we're not. No.
I put the application in.
Listen,
with
I
them.
want the boundary change, okay?
I put the application in on that end. We didn't officially file it, but I had all the paperwork, forms, everybody signed on to it. The complexity there is that one of the original owners up on there has already transferred some water to the city. And there's some things that have been done there that make it a little harder for him to get out, and he controls about half of the property up there.
Is that the guy that wanted to build the reception center?
No, I don't think it is.
I don't think so. This
So are
is,
they-
I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but.
I can ask you later.
Well,
I want a piece
I mean,
of address.
I think,
By the golf course.
I think that the biggest challenge we've got right now is, yes, we got a new well that will be coming online, but it's not a question of if, but when. And I'm not really comfortable going outside of what we're currently providing service-wise to our existing residents until we have the ability to take the water from the ground there and run it in a water line and put it into our water tanks. Because at this stage of the game, until we get that other well on, if we had a well go down, and we'd have to ask our residents to ration their water so that he could bathe his kids inside his house.
I'm likewise uncomfortable with every new connection we make until we have this new well.
So,
line.
I look at that as somewhat of a hindrance.
One of
Which
the
could
things
be
you
short.
mentioned is that they might be willing to pay for some of the new well and buy a share of it basically, so that would.
We don't want them owning our well.
No,
No.
I don't want that.
That's
one.
not-
They threw it out there, they're really.
We're just gonna
willing
charge
to-
them extra is all we're
Yeah.
gonna do for
They're
the
really
time.
By
willing to
extra,
make
I mean
whatever
4 times.
situation makes you guys comfortable. They seem like they're pretty open to deal on this.
Well, I think you're all pretty sensitive to the residents' concerns about,
After that well breaking, I will
Water.
never mess with water again.
The other
It's
thing
hard
is
to
you get
get-
redundancy if Payson comes on, we tie in on the other end, and then we put a valve in where we're tied into Elk Ridge
I
already.
don't think I would ever touch Payson's water system because they chlorinate, and that would be.
Well, not technically over here.
It doesn't
This is a
matter.
totally different
Yeah.
system.
Only,
Puts us under a whole different set of regulations.
Yeah.
We don't wanna be connected at all with theirs.
It would just give you the option if your well went down.
That's why we put the other one in.
Well-
We're already taking care of that. We've got our own back.
Yeah,
there's
it's bad enough we're in the same zip code, so we get subject to the EPA regs. We could get our own zip code, we could free ourselves from that.
This slows you down, huh?
Shay, go ahead.
Which I feel bad about.
I'm leading a different direction with this, but I think it all becomes relevant to it. Has anybody talked to Dan Shaw? Is he willing to allow an exit to this subdivision across his property and down Rimrock?
Well, that, you'd have to go across the golf course to do that. Because the golf course, you got this island, they're up here, you got the greens down here, and then you got Dan Shaw. You'd have to go across the golf course.
I understand, but we're talking about, we're talking about 10 properties, but there's a lot more property in there.
Yeah.
How do we get a second exit out of it? And part of the reason I'm bringing this up is Payson City says they're providing the other services, but who's really providing when there's a fire call? Who's going to show up?
Well, Payson will. They won't let us cross that line.
They won't?
Hey, last Friday we had a call that was in the county
If my
that is
house
under
on
their
fire, you
jurisdiction,
come to my house.
and we were told to stand down.
Are you
And we just
kidding me?
watched it go until they decided what they were doing.
So if there's
I am not
so if
kidding.
there's
That's not
anything
right.
that happens up at right now at the clubhouse, we
Hey,
don't respond.
you have a heart attack patient there, they call it in. If they find out it's on Payson Golf Course, we don't even respond. And the reason I know, is I got an app
No,
on my
that's-
phone.
that's fine.
No,
I'm
no,
just curious.
I mean, they
That's
don't.
why I'm asking.
It's, yeah, if it
It
burns,
is.
just bring hot dogs.
Yep.
Guys, I'm
That's all.
planning on building on that
That's all you
land,
get.
okay?
They don't ask us to come to their calls.
I get
To
that,
my
but
knowledge in the last 20 years, we have been to one call with inside Payson city limits, and it was because it taxed their system and their guys were tired and they'd been on the fire so long, they let our guys go down and do them up.
Gosh, I love government. It's
I mean,
like
it's just-
so stupid sometimes.
There's,
Let the man die, cause we've gotta go up there. Come on. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
that's how it's
I
been.
won't change that.
Yeah.
No, it's.
I mean, we're working
Don't have a
between
heart
the departments
attack
to resolve
cross
it,
Basin City line.
but it's a complex issue.
Yeah, so
Throw me the
we
contract
did talk
again,
about
please.
that when I met with them, and they said they'd contract however they had to do. They felt like they could work through all the issues, the water really is the holdup. They were willing to contract with a private company or whoever to do the snow removal, or trade routes with, shuffle that around and
So-
make that make sense, so.
So let me ask you this with regards to the sewer. Is there intent for you to hook into our sewer lines, or are you gonna?
There's
put
two
in
ways
septic?
they can do it. They're already gonna extend the line to the RV park. That's already in the works and paid for, I guess, so they were saying we get gravity down through there. Technically, I don't know that that's the most cost-effective way to do it. I think doing a pump system from each home to a pressure line and then just dumping to the gravity side and Elkridge ends up back in Payson
But
system.
then we get
Well,
charged for it, right?
The only difficulty with that, as we've discussed it, is now we have to clean the line for their residents. I mean, it's, unless we can charge a fee for O&M on our system to you for that, then it doesn't really
Well,
make
if they
sense.
tie into us, then we would do that anyway, we'd have to do that.
Yeah, I
But
think
no,
that-
but they've got their own section that they ran up through Lee Haskell's, and it runs down and connects in with the trunk line that they have to maintain.
Yeah.
Well, that is our line
Yeah.
that runs
So-
through Lee Haskell's. They just put a tie off of it.
This
But
is
they
one of
did pay for
those-
part of it.
Yeah.
Can we
one of
just talk
those-
about the most obvious? Why that is not Payson. It isn't. I'm just-
Digging
it's-
back
that's
into the history
nonsense.
of it, that's part of what made the golf course thing happen.
Was
Was
Payson.
the land up there was part of the deal, and this goes back, it was disconnected from Elkridge by a judge and given to Payson. So there is a lengthy process of disconnecting it, and it's possible, I just don't know how much it'll cost. And it may not be resolved
I just don't
for
know why
years.
Payson won't say, yeah, that doesn't make sense.
There's money involved in it.
I know, because we want that property tax. Those are gonna be expensive homes and we need it.
Well, I
I'm
think
just
what's
being
gonna happen is if you don't do anything, then if they can tie into an existing sewer line or a sewer line that they've contracted to run up there, that's one thing. If they had to put septic, that's a horrible idea,
Yeah.
right? And then as far as the water goes, if he's gonna drill a well, if they make him drill his own well, right, he's not gonna go 900 feet. He's gonna go to the 350 aquifer, right? And he's gonna be competing with everybody else's well that's going dry at 350 feet that we heard in our 17 people that protested because of all the dry wells that are happening. He's gonna go in the exact same aquifer.
And 10 other houses.
Yep.
10 other houses.
10 other wells, yeah.
And it's
With
gonna
my
affect
swimming pool.
everybody off that. And this is the way I look at it. Where we're at 900 feet or 850 feet in a much probably larger aquifer is my estimation, right? Because it's probably the Utah Lake kind of area. And and we're talking, half a dozen homes.
Yeah, I think they're
I think
trying
it's-
to work out a practical, solution to it, from just reading the letter and the recommendations, they're not trying to take something from us or take advantage of us, I don't think.
If Payson
They're
gives
just
them
trying to
water,
work something
if
out.
Payson pumps water to them out of their 900 foot well, guess what aquifer they're in?
Yeah. But if we charge double
We're all
for that, I think that, personally,
Or whatever
I think
the
that's
justifiable
probably
rate is.
a fair consideration, and
Unless
where
the
it's
well
a
breaks.
pretty limited number of
Yeah.
houses, we could limit it to that.
And I'm not sure
Decided.
Haskellville's gonna develop out like they were thinking it potentially could, right? There may be some.
There was
other
something
things
they were
that-
talking about 2 weeks ago that was
Well,
big.
they're talking about over on P Mountain. That's the
Yeah,
only
now-
place.
right now they're going
They
down.
can't,
That's
if there's
the point.
anything they can do out in Haskellville,
Yeah.
all Reds have that locked up for at least the next 20 years, minimum. So, with an
Yeah.
ag protection zone, so it's.
So
But
do we know
I
how
agree.
Mason's tank is going to be?
What's that?
Do we know where Payson's water tank is going to be?
I don't.
for this?
You know.
I believe it's gonna be pretty much right above that well, is kind of the plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so they would get the elevation
Yeah,
to be
they're
able
gonna
to
put it
tie
up
in.
there.
'Cause that's the
About
other thing
two
I can
tanks.
see
Yeah.
would be, if their tank's below,
Yeah, they were talking 2 tanks, one there and one down closer to where the rest of that element's gonna go.
Yeah, because they're talking about putting water clear out to, by the veterans home.
They're saying it's already funded, like they've already got it in their budget.
I don't know where to go with this, guys.
Yeah.
First of all, I agree with you, Nelson, that until we have,
I'm not,
I
Our
can't commit a
redundant
resource
source.
we don't have.
I don't
yet.
like any new connections, period, even the ones we have to.
I know. I mean, there's a certain amount we have to because state law dictates.
so when is the well projected to be online?
Probably mid, well, depends on what you mean by online. If you're talking about tied into the existing distribution system, I think that's probably gonna be mid next year would be my guess.
Yeah.
If you're talking about when do we run our source line all the way up to the tank and cut out of the distribution system, that's gonna be another year, 2 years past that would be my guess. I don't know, I'm just guessing on that one, but that's phase 2.
But the final well that they're doing now, and they're
I mean, they'll have it tested and capped this month, I suspect, or not capped, but
so they've
prepared for
got
winter.
all the, by this time tonight, should have all the screen in. They were down to one screen before the council meeting put in.
They're
So
almost
they've-
done.
No,
With those-
so this is the screen, this is the area the water's allowed to come into the well from. And so then they've got, 400 feet of casing, but those are 45-foot long sections. So he was thinking they're gonna be done with the casing tomorrow.
Yeah.
Basically where I'm going with this is we're probably gonna be test pumping, maybe the end of next week on this. So
It'll
it's
be-
getting close.
It'll be set up with the pump and everything on it where it could be
Next
utilized.
spring.
and connected.
Well, there's
They're just gonna
no
cap it off.
structure to protect it, so they're just
No,
gonna
They're
basically.
just
we have to
gonna
have everything built before we can.
Okay, so the pump
Yeah.
house.
They'll
is
test
down
pump
there.
it,
So they'll be
but that's where
done.
they'll stop, right, pretty much at that point.
Correct, and then
For the
rest of
winter,
it-
We'll
correct,
design
and
the
then rest
building,
of it's
start the
design
building, then they
building.
gotta put the pumps in, and then they gotta tie all the water lines in, and we still got water lines to run, I think,
Yeah,
just to do the distribution tie-in, right?
yes.
So in a week they'll be done, you think? I'm just trying to figure
Well,
out when they
they-
can sleep again. 'Cause it is loud.
Yeah, well,
Drilling
it
is
should,
done.
yeah, and it should change because they're not drilling
They're
anymore.
not drilling, they're done.
Yeah, but they've
drilling.
gotten louder. Last night they woke me up like 3
They were
times.
still drilling.
Oh my gosh. Do you like how they put the noise barrier on the one side and left it wide open for my house? I'm all, what?
No wonder you got a call.
They hate me. They hate me.
No wonder you got a call.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh well, I got a week left.
I don't know what you're gonna do, guys,
I can deal with it. We got a welcome.
but
Well, I I
One
don't think
other
we
thing
can.
here is, I mean, even
This
if
is
we
not an
did
easy one,
figure this
frankly.
out, we're still late summer, fall next year before we're really.
Well, I think we just keep the options open, the doors aren't shut, we'll continue the discussions and we'll see where they go.
And to get out of Payson, you have to file a lawsuit. They can't just say, well, we can't provide services.
I can file the application, but if they deny it, it goes to court,
right,
which they're gonna deny it.
sure, it'll be in court.
That's good, it's expensive.
And then we want it, if we'd have to want it, right?
You have to, yeah,
Yeah.
then once it's
Excuse me, we
disconnected.
want it.
We may
you
not
have
want
to
it.
annex it in, right?
We want it.
We may not even want it.
But then again, maybe the citizens don't, I don't know, it gets messy and unclear.
Do we know?
Probably,
I
probably
think we're
realistically,
there.
the easiest route forward,
I think
without a
it's
clear
good.
roadmap,
Guys,
is
we
just,
want it.
well.
No, it's gonna be a new city, it'll be called Thomasville.
I'm fine with that. I'll be the mayor.
Thomas, you can be a mayor, you can be the mayor of this city if you want.
There's only 10 people in that house.
We could,
In
we
that
could
thing.
take that vote here next time we
No,
do.
no chance.
So is there anything to take back to Payson and get them to work on their end? I mean, what can,
No, I don't think so. I think it takes these guys to say, yes, we'll provide water.
and right now there's not enough votes to do that.
No. Plus, I have a vested interest in it, so I'm really holding out for Elk Ridge.
Plus, we have to get a fee structure together and figure out how to pay for it and get Payson on board. And then I want to twist our arm for a couple things
Yeah, we do.
for this, right? So that we don't, so there's other things that I think would benefit us. So that we don't end up with
Houses
the
with
5,000 watt streetlights that radiate in every direction
Oh,
right
same.
next to the
Oh, or like the ones on the clubhouse. See if we can get them to turn those off at night.
General plan discussion, sorry, we're done.
So,
with that
so
one.
does that mean you guys are gonna have more conversation with them, or where does that leave us?
I don't know if we have anything discussed, they're just waiting for us to do something, I think.
Yeah.
I think if you guys wanted to go twist their arm, they'd probably let you.
I'm willing to have a come to Jesus talk with them, but
There's nothing to talk about, it's up to
give
us.
the land to us.
Oh, get the land on.
That's a come to Jesus talk I'm going to have with them.
Okay. Dead. It's not closed, but it's, I don't feel it moving anywhere real fast.
We will be killed if we sell water to Payson until we have another well. And maybe
You wouldn't be that's the thing, you're not selling it to them, you're just pumping their water for them at a price.
But do you think the residents are gonna see it that way?
Yeah,
Or do you
that's
think
what water
when the
rights
well
are.
goes down and they can't water their yard, they're gonna be like, well, why are
I'm
you
not
selling
sure
water to Payson?
that'll be that big of a hassle.
You know, we have a house that's connected to our system. We actually,
So we do.
the clubhouse that is connected to our system. And we've got one house that I'm aware of that's in the county that's connected to our system. When we went on water restrictions, they kept watering their garden and everything else, and they weren't even supposed to use water outside. So,
All right, let's go on.
Okay.
General plan, draft discussion.
do they really want our input? Or do they just, they're just gonna do their own thing anyways?
Jim loves
Because I'm just curious because,
Jared, where's Jared?
yeah, where did
Sherry,
Jim go?
I need to talk to her.
Why, did you get a ticket and you're trying to get out of it or something?
No, she did pull my kids over on the four-wheeler though. My 13-year-old driving on 4 kids without helmets.
So do we have,
I mean,
So maybe Shay can get, but now next meeting on planning commission, they're gonna go through the map, so I'm kinda also saying, why don't they just finish my 2 cents is finish the maps and then we'll come and.
Yeah.
I think they do want your, they want your input on this because they don't want it to turn into the animal code or the fence code or that, where we have a lot of back and forth with this. So that's why they wanted to bring some sections forward and see if you guys were generally okay or if there's some issues. I would like to point out though, so what's really ended up happening through this process is they've taken the general plan and erased half of it.
Pretty much.
They took out the process basically they took out the goals and the process.
left objectives
or objectives, and it pulled all that out and just basically left the meat, which I don't have a problem with that, but the next step with this that I'm going to go back to them on is this is telling us, this is basically the vision of what you want, but how do we implement it?
Yeah.
And so,
And I like them
if
separate
you take a
documents,
chance
so.
to, if you take a little bit of time and read through this, think about that. If there's certain things that you would like to see spelled out as steps or directions we take to implement this, let's get them in there, because this is no more. It's not any more useful than just the zoning map is. If we don't, I mean, having a vision is great, but if we don't know where we're going to go from there to actual code to, it's not. It's not a strong document.
Our code needs to mesh with that as well. I mean,
Yeah,
if we're gonna say we're not interested in any more PUDs and we take it out of the general plan, but we leave it in our code or vice versa, it doesn't make any sense.
correct.
All it
And
does is
that would be the
conflicting
next step
signals.
once this is all approved. Once the general plan's approved, the next
I
step
don't even know
is.
how to get it anymore, because the links I've been given don't work, so.
Well, the last time when they updated it in their planning commission meeting, I guess right while they were doing it, I got a notification that they had gone in and accepted or rejected every comment that I had made. And I was able to go in and access it at that point in time, but that was the first time I've had access to it for like a month.
That's true.
I don't even have
It's
that.
been
We've been
kind of
trying
scrappy.
to give a good copy to you guys, so.
Yeah.
It's really been.
So I don't even have a way to review it.
And the other piece of feedback I'd
Right
give
now.
is like because right now I can go in and I can make comments when I have access to it, but then after they accepted it or rejected my comment, because I'm not familiar enough with Google Docs and how they're doing this, I can't go in and access and see my comments and see if the new version that's been updated, if any piece of that's even been implemented or included, or if it was just stricken out. I mean, that's why I'm saying I don't even know why it matters, because I can't tell. Because I can't even go back and reference those, because some of those comments that I put in there were clear back in the summer. I don't remember what I put in back in June and July when I was reviewing it. I got about 2/3 of the way through it, so I don't know.
Well, that's good to know. See what we can.
Anyway, if we can get that, let's work on getting it for that. Anything else? Do we need any more on that? I mean, I think the next really is we need to get that updated.
We'd have to have something to look at.
Yeah, Shay and Sharon and I will kind of get our final game plan.
Yeah.
How do we get it to you to work and.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like
I
to.
agree with Shay, they have just deleted a lot of it, and we're
Well-
fine if deletions make sense, but we want to make sure that.
I would like to see the deletions be redlined, not
Yes,
just
and
gone.
we agree with that.
Yeah.
And that was what I noticed. It looked to me honestly like there were whole sections that were just gone because
True.
sections of the pages were white.
One night they did 30 pages or something. It was
Yeah. So again, going back to, I don't understand how that system works very well because I don't live in that world. I think it'd be a good reference point so that when we have the discussion, when I
we'll
go
work on
back on
something,
what.
trying to get this so that we can see this. McKay, do you have anything you'd like to bring up, City Council?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I have one question for you, okay? So down there on Elk Ridge Drive, right as you get to the church, there's a little manhole cover where they've had a hose coming out and water just flowing? Is there
Flushing the 12-inch.
Okay, so they're flushing, okay. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't just opening the spigot, just letting water run down.
No,
just for the sake of
no.
letting it run down.
Trying to get that line
As long as
flushed
there
and
is that,
passed
is what they're
off.
doing, okay.
You know, one thing I think we ought to look at too before the snow flies, I still think we need to have like a reflector post on each side of that center divider so that snowplow driver and regular residents see the borders, you know, that when it's covered with snow, you know, you just having a
We had them to
black
start
post
with
or
last
something.
year. You flagged those with
Yeah.
Paul and you.
But we need to do something like that, I think, McKay, for
Reflectors.
for this winter, don't you think?
It's all
Yeah,
concrete now.
yeah, they're concrete now,
Gonna be a little tougher.
so.
Okay.
Not actually, well, but even if you just put a post, I think like if it's like the 12-foot wide, put one on each side of that width. It's inside the concrete, but just you know, drop it down in the. It gives you, it identifies where the edge of that concrete is. You know that it's a relatively narrow.
One issue you're gonna, problem with doing that is inevitably they're gonna get hit. When they get hit, they pull out of the concrete, and your concrete breaks and cracks and falls apart. So,
What about
finding some way to do this to where it's.
What about they have those, I call them bicycle flags, but they have large
That's what
flexible
we-
fiberglass with the.
That was kind of the style that we used last year, but it just
Yeah.
stuck in the dirt. So
Yeah,
we're just
that's
gonna
what,
have to find
I
I'm
think
just
that-
putting those at the end of the landscaping in the dirt.
Yeah.
I think that is,
At
yeah, it'd
least
be
it's-
fine.
it's
in
better
the
than-
dirt.
You're gonna have your.
Yeah, you still got a long run out, but.
It just identifies where those borders are, I think.
McKay, update us on our plow.
Talked to him last week. They're expecting the chassis to be in the shop, in Legacy's shop, by roughly the middle of October. So within the next week or two, we should have a chassis in the shop. Then we're about 60 days out to get everything put onto it. So we're looking at roughly December.
They've taken delivery on everything else,
Everything,
the bed,
the bed, the sander, the
sander,
plow,
the plow.
everything is there, all the controls, all the wiring, the lights. Everything is there, ready to go. We're just waiting on Freightliner to get the chassis to Legacy. So the biggest problem and issue with that is the four-wheel drive components make it.
That's what's delayed them.
That's what's delayed them. Is
So,
getting four-wheel drive
middle of
components
December?
put together. He said he'll be thoroughly embarrassed if we don't have that weeks before Christmas. So it's thinking first to middle of December.
Right when it snows the first
Right
day.
when which is typically our biggest snowstorm. So
We've contracted the price, correct? So there's we're not
Yeah,
gonna be
no.
surprised by
No,
any
no,
increases.
no,
right?
the price is,
And the budget's set too, so they don't get any.
yeah,
Good.
price is what it is regardless. And so, had we ordered this truck later, we wouldn't have seen it till spring. So we're lucky, we're
When
gonna
did
be
we
the only
order it?
ones that get a truck this year. We ordered in April,
Was it April?
and it was roughly
Around April.
around April.
So we want to remember this, because in 3
So-
years, I think we're gonna roll out the 90, get rid of the 96.
Those that will be on
Yeah.
city council in 3 years
So-
will want to remember this.
So we're as of right now, we're gonna be the only ones to get a truck this year.
That's
So-
incredible.
So we're pretty,
I know, we're
pretty
running
lucky.
for re-election.
I think we're done.
Well,
Okay.
good job, McKay. Doing a good job.